Chapter 84. Bailu frowned, said quietly, "What is wrong? The mechanism should be here." As he spoke, he felt anxious. He exerted more strength in his hand and moved the giant axe. Unexpectedly, the right hand of the Heaven Vidyaraja statue also moved a little. Suddenly, there seemed to be some kind of heavy mechanical sound in the stone room. Shah Danan jumped up. Bailu was happy. They looked at each other. Shah Danan ran to them and grabbed the axe together with Bailu. They pulled it. The axe and Heaven Vidyaraja's right hand were raised to mid-air. After a moment, a deafening roar sounded in the stone room. They were surprised. They could only feel the roar beside their ears. The pain was unbearable. They quickly covered their ears with their hands. After a moment, the roar was still loud. But on the stone wall behind the statue, the large and hard stone wall slowly moved to the side, revealing a passage. The stone stairs went up until the darkness ahead. At this moment, the stone room where the statue was suddenly shook violently. Rocks fell from above. They did not say anything. They ran toward the stone stairs at the same time and entered into the darkness. Actually, 800 years ago, when the evil sect Bloodforger Hall was building the Blood Drop Cave, they had already considered the possibility that in the future they would be attacked by the enemy. Therefore, they secretly built this tunnel in the middle of the mountain. Once the enemy attacked, they would escape through this tunnel, and after a while, the Blood Drop Cave would collapse, burying the enemy together with Bloodforger Hall's countless secrets. Shah Danan and Bailu ran with all their strength. The loud noise continued behind them, rocks flying. If they run slowly, they will die here. So they used the last bit of strength in their body and ran forward. After running for a short distance, the two of them were faced with darkness. In this narrow and dark secret passage, the two of them did not know how many times they had fallen and bumped into each other. They could only hear loud rumbles and rocks flying everywhere. It was as if the entire Kongsang mountain was angry and trembling. But finally, with a desire to survive, the two of them saw a glimmer of light in front of them. This secret cave's entrance was actually located in the middle of Kongsang Mountain, below a cliff in the shade of the mountain. The trees were luxuriant, and it was extremely well hidden. No wonder no one had seen it for the past 800 years. Most likely, the descendants of Bloodforger Hall did not know about this place. Shah Danan and Bailu staggered out. Almost at the moment when they fell on the ground, a loud boom was heard. Thousands of pounds of rock fell on the ground. Dust rose and blocked the entrance. From now on, no one could see the secret inside the mountain. Crouching on the ground, Shah Danan gasped for air. His fingers tightly grasped the slightly moist green grass on the ground. The feeling of running at the edge of life and death was really suffocating. After a while, his mood slowly relaxed. He raised his head and looked to the side. He saw Bailu was next to him. Her white face was now lightly covered with dust. She seemed to feel Shah Danan's gaze. She also turned and looked at him. The joy of surviving a calamity slowly appeared on their faces. Bailu's lips moved. It was like there was water flowing in her eyes, misty with crystal. She let out a sobbing cheer, a kind of relief after an infinitely great pressure. She could not think of anything else. She only felt the sky was very blue, the mountain was very high, the breeze was blowing, the mountain was covered with green, the green shadow was dancing, the trees were moving, this world was filled with breathtaking beauty. We survived, she shouted joyfully, facing the green mountain and blue sky. Shah Danan laughed loudly. He stood next to her, watching her open her arms, revealing the most beautiful smile in the world. In the sound of crackle, the fire swallowed the firewood, made a crisp sound, and rose a puff of light smoke. Bailu sat next to the fire, watching Shah Danan use a thick branch to clean up a wild rabbit he just caught, then put on the fire to roast. As the flame roasted, the rabbit meat gradually turned golden. The oil also condensed into water droplets and dripped down. Under the forest, delicious aromas spread everywhere. Bailu was very hungry in the cave. Bailu could not hold her saliva and swallowed. Shah Danan was not in a hurry. He looked at the fire, then habitually touched his waist. His face startled, then turned to joy. Bailu surprised. What? Shah Danan happily took out a small bag from his waist, smiled. Can't believe the food is lost, but these things are still here. I didn't notice it a few days ago. Bila looked at the small bag. Shah Danan carefully opened the bag, revealing a few small bottles and cans. She was curious, picked them up, and smelled them. She was stunned, looked at Shah Danan, almost speechless. This is some salt and seasonings. Shah Danan was full of smile, said, Yeah, I always bring it with me when I leave the mountain. Just in case if I need to stay in the wild, I can make some good food. Didn't expect it can be used today. Bila looked at Shah Danan up and down, speechless for a moment. He carefully sprinkled the spice or salt on the rabbit meat, then slowly turned the branch to roast it. The fragrance in the air was getting thicker. She had never seen a righteous person like this. He brought seasonings with him when he came out. He looked more like a cook than a disciple from a famous righteous faction. After a while, Shah Danan sniffed, said happily, Good, you can eat now. Bila was already impatient from waiting for a long time. The fragrance was like everywhere, went into her pores. After sniffing it, her body felt like it was floating much lighter. As for her mouth, it was needless to say, if she did not carefully hide it, even the goo-goo-goo sound of her stomach would be heard by this kid. When she heard Shah Danan was being kind and finally finished, she saw a golden, delicious rabbit in front of her. Her saliva almost dripped down. She couldn't help but reach out her hand. But she forgot. When her hand touched it, she screamed ah and pulled back. She was burned. Shah Danan smiled. Don't rush. Then he took the branch away from the fire, moved it up and down, let the grease drip down. The temperature of the meat was also lower. Then he carefully tore off a rabbit leg, gave it to Bailu, smiled. Eat it. Bailu immediately reached out her hand and took the rabbit meat. Just when she was about to open her mouth, she suddenly saw Shah Danan's gentle smile, looking at her. The sunlight shined through the dense leaves. Bit by bit fell on his face. It was so hearty. For some reason, her face suddenly blushed. She turned her head, turned her back to Shah Danan, and began to eat. Shah Danan startled, but he did not care. He was already hungry. He tore off another rabbit leg and began to chew on it. Halfway through, he suddenly saw Bailu turn around and looked at him. She asked with surprise, What is it, right? Is the meat delicious? Bailu's face was slightly blushed. The breeze from the deep of the forest gently lifted her soft long hair, brushed past her white face. Very delicious. Shah Danan, what is it? Bailu, I finished. Her face had a touch of gentleness, a hint of faint shyness. Shah Danan opened his mouth, stunned. Bailu slightly lowered her head. Both of them suddenly became silent. After a while, Shah Danan suddenly woke up. Ah! Sweat appeared on his head, stammered, unable to form a sentence. I didn't look, no, look at me. Ah, no, I'll give it to you. Then he closed his eyes, handed over the rabbit leg. For some reason, he did not dare to open his eyes. But after a long time, Bailu did not move. Shah Danan gathered his courage, slowly opened his eyes. Bailu was looking at him, with a faint smile on her face, but her eyes were gentle, with an indescribable charm. She said quietly with a smile, Are you going to give this to me to eat? Shah Danan was puzzled. He looked at his hand, then immediately blushed, ashamed. What he handed to Bailu was the rabbit leg that he had half eaten in his right hand, and most of the rabbit meat was in his left hand next to him. No, not. Shah Danan was extremely embarrassed. He quickly took back the embarrassing rabbit leg, then embarrassedly handed over the intact rabbit meat. His mouth murmured, I was thinking. I know. Bailu took the rabbit, tore off a piece of meat, and put it in her mouth, lightly chewed. Very delicious. The most delicious thing I have ever eaten in my life is the rabbit you are roasting right now. Shah Danan's heart skipped a beat. He saw on Bailu's beautiful face, half smiling, half serious, said. His heart shook. He did not dare to look at it anymore. He opened his mouth and bit the half-eaten rabbit leg, buried his head in it, and ate. It didn't take long for the rabbit to be wiped out by the two starving people. It was the first time for many days to have a full meal. It was really a happy thing. Bailu found a stream in the mountain. They washed themselves next to the stream, Then both of them felt a little sleepy. Speaking of which, their nerves had been tight in the mountain, felt like they were walking on the edge of life and death. Now that they came out, their whole body relaxed. The sleepiness also came. Bila was the first one who could not hold it anymore. She lay down on the small lawn next to the stream and fell asleep. Shah Danan also felt sleepy, so he lay down next to her. But he felt the warm sunlight gently shined on them. He could not help but turn to look at Bailu. After Bailu washed herself, her hair was still a little messy, but her face was as white as jade as when they first met. Her skin was whiter than snow, like it could be broken by the wind. She closed her eyes, quietly lay there. The breeze blew, her hair lightly moved. Under the sunlight, it emitted a soft glow. Suddenly, Bailu seemed to have seen something in her sleep. Her eyebrows slightly frowned. Her right hand habitually grabbed Shah Danan's shoulder, snuggled next to him. Then, on her lips, there was a faint smile. She peacefully fell asleep like that. Shah Danan was stunned. But looking at her slightly haggard but still beautiful face, he did not have the courage to take her hand away. He lay there without moving. Gradually, his sleepiness came. He closed his eyes like he forgot about it, like it was normal. He peacefully fell asleep. The breeze in the forest was still gently blowing, blowing through the tree, blowing through the green leaves, blowing through the quietly flowing stream, stirred up the ripples, and finally brushed past the two young people. Chapter 85. When Shah Danan woke up, the sky was already dark. He must have slept for at least 10 or 12 hours, but Bailu still did not wake up. Her hands were tightly holding his clothes. She looked like a frightened child. No one could imagine she was actually an important person in Falcon. Shah Danan put his hand under his head, listening to the rustling sound of the trees in the forest. Suddenly, he thought of Mount Jadian's bamboo peak. The bamboo forest didn't it also make the same sound? These days, I was missing in Cave of Fangs. The news must have been sent back to Bamboo Peak. I wonder if Ling'er Shiji will be sad when she knows it. However, if I suddenly appeared in front of her, she would definitely be happy. She would definitely grab my hand and laugh. Brat, I knew you wouldn't die so easily. In the gradually darkening night, a smile appeared on his face. Even his eyes were so bright in the dark night. However, he did not notice that there was another pair of bright eyes beside him. He did not know when this pair of eyes had started to faintly stare at him. The sky was bright again. Birds chirped in the mountain, clear and sweet. Shah Danan walked to the stream, put his hands together, scooped up a handful of water, and splashed it on his face. The cool feeling went straight into his heart. He checked his left hand and removed the bandage. The broken bone was almost healed. He was happy. He took off the fire stick tied to his hand and inserted it into his waist. He exercised his left hand. Sure enough, it was not a big problem. Is your hand healed? Bailu came from behind him, looked at him, then squatted down and washed her face with the stream water. Yeah, Shah Danan said happily, it's no big deal. It doesn't hurt at all. Bailu used her sleeve to gently wipe the water off her face, said, don't move around. Your bones and tendons are hurt. You need to rest for a while more. Got it, Shah Danan answered, then looked at Bailu, hesitated for a moment, then said, Miss Bailu, now we are lucky enough to stay alive and escape from the mountain. You and I can be counted as friends. But since we're different, we will part here today. Bailu crouched beside the water, did not get up, but her body seemed to tremble. Shah Danan could not see her expression. After a while, he heard her low voice said, Oh, is it different? Shah Danan nodded. Yes, I am righteous, you are Falcon. Since young, my master taught me that righteous and evil cannot coexist. Next time we meet, I am afraid we will be enemies. You took care of me and saved me in the belly of the mountain. I am truly grateful. If fate wills it in the future, I will naturally repay this kindness. Bailu looked at the reflection of the blurry figure in the clear water, murmured, Repay me? Shah Danan answered, Yes, we are clear about kindness and hatred. If you did not save me, there is no way I can survive. If there is anything I can do for you in the future, I will do it. At this point, he suddenly felt that it was inappropriate and hurriedly added, but you can't make me do anything that would betray the righteousness of the sect. Bailu suddenly stood up, turned around, said, I can see you are a talent. Why don't you join our holy faction? I will recommend you to Father. He always loves talent. He will definitely put you in an important position. It is better than being a nameless cook in Bamboo Peak. Shah Danan's face darkened, said, Miss Bailu, don't talk nonsense. I am a righteous. I would rather die than join Falcon. From what I see, being a little cook in Bamboo Peak is much better than being able to control the wind and reign in your Falcon. Bai Yao's lips curled up into a cold smile. Her words also became sharp and cold. Righteous? The sin that you righteous created is no less than us Falcon. During the war between righteous and evil, your ancestors also killed everyone they saw. Even the old, women, and children were not spared. Nonsense. Shah Danan was enraged. Those are the good deeds of your Falcon. You think I don't know? You killed a lot of people, ruined the people. Bailu said angrily, Did you see it with your own eyes? Didn't your master tell you that? For their own face, why would they tell you the truth? Shah Danan laughed coldly, said, Then did you see it with your own eyes? You are telling me that righteous is evil. Falcon is good. Isn't it just your elders whitewash the words of their ancestors? Bailu, startled, couldn't say anything. Shah Danan looked at her, recalled the days of life and death together with her. His heart softened, lowered his voice, said softly, Miss Bailu, no matter what the ancestors did, let us not care about them. But our Jadian's rule is strict, forbid our disciples to contact with Falcon. I live in Jadian, I dare not to violate it. Today we will part here, if fate allows us to meet again. If you can repent, forsake the darkness for the light, I, Shah Danan, will use my life to guarantee for you. Let you enter the righteous. He said eloquently, but then he stopped. Bailu was sneering at him. Your bullshit righteous can't even invite me and still talk about forsake the darkness for the light. Fine, I will give you a clear path. If you don't want to go, then go be your righteous. The next time we meet, the first thing I will take is your head. Shah Danan was surprised. This woman changed her attitude faster than turning a page of a book. But he had no mood to argue, and he always felt he owed Bailu. He cupped his hands, said, Take care. Then he turned and walked away without looking back. Bailu watched him walk away. She did not turn her head even once. After his figure disappeared in the forest, suddenly, her heart was empty, like she lost something important. She lost her spirit and slowly sat down. Her eyes wandered past the ashes where Shah Danan barbecued the rabbit last night. She was startled, and tears unknowingly came out. She looked at the pile of ashes and just sat there. After an unknown amount of time, she suddenly realized that the crisp chirping of the birds in the forest behind her had suddenly quietened down, as if they had sensed something ominous and didn't dare to make a sound. Then, she saw a black shadow slowly moved out from behind her, shrouding her. Although it was daytime, but for some reason, it was like the sky had darkened. Bailu suddenly turned her head, looked at the person behind her. After a while, she cried sadly, Dad. She threw herself into that person's arms. That shadow, startled, did not expect Bailu would do such thing. But he was happy to see his daughter escaped from danger. The joy could not be hidden anymore. Shah Danan walked in the forest for a day, then left the boundary of Kongseng Mountain. If he were to fly, he could get out in half a day, but because of the wound on his left hand, he was willing to walk a little longer. But Kongseng Mountain was always sparsely populated. He did not see a single person on the way. After spending a night in the wild, Shah Danan walked on the official road. The road became wider, and the number of people also increased. He asked the passers-by on the road, got the direction of the road, then headed north. That day noon, very hot. Shah Danan had traveled for half a day. His mouth was very thirsty. He saw a small tea stall on a roadside, under a big tree. There were already 5 or 6 customers sitting there. Seeing it was cool, he went there, bought a cup of tea, and took a rest. The tea from the small tea stall was really refreshing. Shah Danan drank a bowl and immediately felt comfortable. It was like the weather was not so hot anymore. He thought that the wound on his hand was already healed. In the afternoon, he will find a quiet place and fly back. It will be faster and he can see his master earlier. Thinking about it, he naturally remembered he could see his Shiji Hidi. His heart couldn't help but warm up. At that moment, a gentle voice came from the side of the road. "Shopkeeper, give me a cup of tea." At noon, a rare breeze blew past, causing the branches and leaves on the tree to sway. Bits of broken sunlight fell to the ground. The 50-something-years-old tea stall owner answered, bent down to pour the tea. Shah Danon inadvertently looked at him. Then he could not take his eyes back. He was a middle-aged scholar with thin eyebrows and a square face. His facial features looked refined, but his eyes were bright and his forehead was full. Yet, amidst his elegance, he exuded an imposing aura. He was dressed in a scholarly robe, and there was a light purple jade pendant hanging from his waist. It was exquisite and translucent, and faintly emitted an auspicious aura. Shah Danon looked at him for a while, then suddenly realized he was shocked by the middle-aged scholar's demeanor. When he walked in, including himself, the 5 or 6 customers who were drinking tea at the tea stall were all silent, suppressed by this person's presence. Shah Danon took back his eyes, but his heart was slightly surprised. At the same time, he was greatly impressed by the middle-aged scholar's presence. Although this person was not very handsome, but the presence that came from inside was really rare. The scholar entered the tea stall, took the tea from the shopkeeper, sat down, and began to slowly taste the tea. The customers who were chatting and laughing around them were now silent. The atmosphere in the tea stall was so quiet that it was a little strange. Only the middle-aged scholar was calm and collected. He didn't notice the situation around him at all. He was drinking tea and resting alone. Chapter 86. After a while, the other customers either had enough rest or finished their tea, paid the bill, and left. The boss came to clean the bowl. Under the tree, only Shah Danon and the middle-aged scholar were left. Shah Danon did not feel uncomfortable. After sitting for a while, he felt he had enough rest. When he was about to pay the bill and leave, he suddenly heard a voice behind him. "Young brother." Shah Danon startled. The voice was gentle and familiar. He turned around and saw the scholar was smiling at him. He was surprised. "Mister, are you calling me?" The scholar nodded with a smile. "Yes." Then he stood up and slowly walked to him. Shah Danon also stood up. When he was near, Shah Danon clasped his hands. "May I ask, what is Mister's matter?" The middle-aged scholar examined Shah Danon, said, "No, just a lonely journey, and find young brother pleasing to my eyes, so I came here to chat. Young brother, do not mind, right?" Shah Danon quickly shook his head. "No problem, Mister, please sit." The scholar nodded with a smile. "Come, young brother, you also sit." They sat down. The scholar looked at Shah Danon, said, "May I ask young brother's name?" Shah Danon grew up in Grass Temple Village. Then he was taken in by Jadian. These years, other than Jadian Bamboo Peak, he almost never talked to anyone. Of course, the days when he was trapped in Forsaken Abyss with the Falcon Girl Bailu did not count. He was talking to this scholar. For some reason, he had a bit of respect for this person. He respectfully said, "I don't dare. I am Shah Danon. May I ask Mister's name?" The scholar first said, "Shah Danon." Then he nodded, smiled. "My surname is Wan. Cursive name Ren Wong. Wan Ren Wong." Shah Danon read it in his mind. The name sounded normal, but it gave people the feeling of a powerful army. Shah Danon couldn't help but look at him. Wan Ren Wong's face was gentle, but the power between his eyebrows was like he was born with it. It was extremely heavy. Matched with the name, it gave him the feeling of controlling thousands of people. Wan Ren Wong examined Shah Danon, smiled. "Forgive me for asking. Is Mr. Zhang a cultivator?" Shah Danon was surprised. After he and Kevern left the mountain, for the convenience of the journey, they took off their Jadian clothing and wore normal clothes. They looked no different from normal people. How did the middle-aged man see through them? He was shocked and wanted to ask this middle-aged man how did he know, but saw that middle-aged man smiled, pointed to the north and said, "May I ask Zhang Xiao Xiongdi, are you from the current good faction number 1 Big Sec Qinyan Hill?" Shah Danon was even more surprised. He couldn't help but stood up, looked at Wan Ren Wong, surprised. "Excuse me, Wan Xiong. How did you know?" Wan Ren Wong smiled and waved his hand. "Please take a seat." After Shah Danon slowly sat down, Wanren Wang smiled. I see Mr. Zhang is full of spirit, no tiredness on your face. You look young, but you're better than many people in their prime. In this world, cultivation is very popular. I believe you must be a person with great skill. Sha Danan lowered his head and thanked him, but couldn't help but asked, Then my faction, how did Mr. know? Wanren Wang smiled casually and said, There's no other reason. I see that little brother is travel-worn and keeps looking towards the north. There's a longing look on your face, as if you were eager to return home. And in the north, the closest and most famous cultivation sect is Jadian. Speaking of which, I'm just guessing randomly. Sorry to make Mr. Zhang laugh at me. Sha Danan quickly said, Not at all. Mr. is so perceptive. You and I have never met before, but you can tell it. I really admire you. These words were from his heart. Wanren Wang smiled and said, Jadian School has been famous in the world of cultivation for a long time. It has a long history and profound skills. It is admired by everyone in the world. Little brother has entered a famous school at such a young age. Your future is limitless. Sha Danan heard the word limitless. His heart was moved. He somehow remembered Kevern from Dragonhead Peak. Bay's figure also flashed in his mind. He shook his head. Mr. is flattering me. Jadian's disciples are all hidden dragons and crouching tigers. I'm just a piece of rotten wood, not worth much. Wanren Wang startled, then laughed. Can't believe Mr. Zhang also knows how to joke. Sha Danan did not want to argue with him on this topic, so he asked, Mr. Wan looks travel-worn. Where are you going? Wanren Wang stood up leisurely, held his hands behind his back, looked at the sky, said, The world is vast and boundless. I am traveling the world. I can go anywhere I want. Ah, Sha Danan exclaimed. So that's why? Wanren Wang turned his head and looked at Sha Danan. A strange smile flashed across his face, said, Mr. Zhang is a disciple of Jadian. Your cultivation must be profound. Sha Danan quickly shook his head, said, No. I am just a useless person in Jadian. How can I say my cultivation is profound? Wanren Wang smiled. Mr. Zhang is too polite. I have a presumptuous request. Hope Mr. Zhang can fulfill it. Sha Danan, startled, said, Mr. Wan, please say it. Wanren Wang said, I have admired a cultivator like Mr. since young. But my luck is not enough, unable to find the door. Also, it is my dream to know that a cultivator can use their esper to travel above the 9 heavens. For dozens of years, there is not a day that I do not wish to see a celestial esper. Mr. Zhang is a disciple of a famous house. I wonder if you can fulfill my little wish. Then he bowed deeply, made a big bow. Sha Danan was speechless. Seeing Wanren Wang bowed, he panicked and quickly held him. He was in a difficult situation. After hesitating for a moment, seeing Wanren Wang was still looking at him expectantly, he sighed, I am not afraid Mr. Wan will laugh at me. It is not that I do not want to let Mr. Wan see it. It is just that the esper is not presentable, I am afraid. Wanren Wang immediately said, It is not a problem. How can a celestial esper not be presentable? Sha Danan blushed. He could not let go of his face. He pulled out the fire stick from his waist and handed it to Wanren Wang. Wanren Wang was surprised for a moment when he handed over such a thing, but then it disappeared. He received it solemnly. Sha Danan saw his expression, smiled bitterly. Not only you, even my faction often laugh at me. After that, Sha Danan was surprised. He felt very strange today. In front of a person he had never met before. How come he was willing to say anything to him? Wanren Wang did not notice Sha Danan. His eyes were on the fire stick. His face was solemn, but his eyes were casual. But gradually he seemed to see something. Not only his face darkened, his eyes were staring at the ugly black stick. Sha Danan felt Wanren Wang was very strange. He held the 1-foot-long fire stick in front of him, carefully looked at it. His right hand held it. Left hand's 5 fingers gently stroked the stick, lightly tapped, extremely careful. He couldn't help but asked, Mr. Wan, is there anything wrong? Wanren Wang was awakened from a dream. He hesitated for a moment, then returned the fire stick to Sha Danan, said, Mr. Zhang, because I admire the cultivation of celestial, I have read some books about it. "There is something I need to ask, Mr. Zhang." Sha Danan said, "Please say it." Wan Ren Wang peered at the fire stick, said, "Mr. Zhang, does this esper contain your blood?" Sha Danan was surprised. The horrible scene in the valley behind Bamboo Peak flashed in his mind. He suddenly stood up, pointed at Wan Ren Wang. What did you say?" Wan Ren Wang glanced at him and said slowly, "Brother Zhang, may I ask, is this magic treasure the combination of two things?" One of Sha Danan's deepest secret in his heart was told out by this person. This surprise was no small matter. His head buzzed. He could not say anything. Wan Ren Wang looked at Sha Danan's surprised face. He knew his guess was right. He lowered his head, seemed like he remembered something, sighed. "You don't know. The bead on this stick is the falcon's sacred relic." Sha Danan was more and more surprised, almost held his breath. But there was a voice in his heart, like laughing coldly. You already know. This stick is so evil. Of course it is the falcon's evil relic." What did you say?" Sha Danan breathed heavily, stared at him, said word by word. "This bead is the relic of the falcon's founder, Elder Blackheart, 800 years ago." Wan Ren Wang's words were like nails, nailed into Sha Danan's heart. "Its name is Sinister Orb." Sha Danan was stunned, held his breath. Thousands of thoughts, hundreds and thousands of turns in his mind, but there was one image that he could not forget. The skeleton in the secret cave inside Kongsang Mountain. Wan Ren Wang looked at his shocked face, paused for a moment, and then said lightly, "Brother Zhang, you know the origin of this bead, but I wonder if you are willing to know the origin of this short black stick?" Sha Danan's body shook. He could not say anything, only stare at Wan Ren Wang. Chapter 87. Sha Danan looked deeply at the middle-aged scholar who called himself Wan Ren Wang. A bad premonition rose in his heart. But at the same time, there was another force in his heart that forced him to ask, "Mister, please teach me." Wan Ren Wang gave him a meaningful look and said slowly, "This black short stick has a very strong, evil aura. It's black and glossy and restrained. If someone gets close to it, within 30 feet of it, his blood and chi will be forced by this evil aura and flow into his heart, killing him." Sha Danan's heart moved. He couldn't help but said, "That's right. When I first encountered this thing, I already felt my body was heavy, nauseous, almost fainted." Wan Ren Wang sighed, looked at him, said, "That's right, that's it." Then he frowned, sighed, "You are not dead, really strange." Sha Danan did not hear what he said at the end, asked, "What?" Wan Ren Wang smiled, but did not answer him. He only pointed to the fire stick and said, "This black short stick is an innately ferocious object. It is called Soul Reaper, but it is not an object of the evil cult. It has never appeared in the world for thousands of years. There are only some records in ancient volumes. Brother Zhang is very lucky to be able to obtain these two treasures." "Soul Taker." Sha Danan's face was wooden. He murmured, "That's right." Wan Ren Wang's face returned to calmness, said, "There is a record in the ancient book 10 Rare Treasures. There is a strange iron in the sky, fell in the 9 nether. Nether ghost fire burned the nether spirits and souls to refine it. 1,000 years red, 1,000 years form. 1,000 years gather the ghost energy. 1,000 years gain the ability of Soul Taker. Actually, this evil item is not something a living person can control. Didn't expect, young Mr. Zhang." Clang! The black fire stick fell from Sha Danan's hand, fell on the ground. Sha Danan's limbs were soft, his chest felt tight. He staggered back a few steps, stared at the fire stick that had been with him for these years, unable to say anything. Wan Ren Wang looked at his shocked face. A sneer flashed across his face, said, "Young Mr. Zhang, what happened to you?" Sha Danan shook his head. It was painful to even speak. He murmured, How could it be like this? I am Jadian's disciple. How could I use such evil thing?" At this moment, he also remembered that day in the Forsaken Abyss. No wonder those Een spirits were so afraid of his fire stick. It was most likely this soul catcher's doing. Wan Ren Wang looked at him and knew that this youth had grown up in Qing Yin's sect and had never seen much of the world. Now that he encountered such a huge change, he was at a loss. Just that looking at him, He did not seem to have any consolation, only indifferently said, "Evil thing? Why do you think it's an evil creature?" Shah Danon seemed lost, pointing at the fire stick on the ground. This thing has harmed many lives. Is it not evil?" Wanren Wong sneered. "Is killing more people an evil being?" Shah Danon said without thinking, "Yes." Wanren Wong's face was filled with mockery, the menace between his eyebrows revealed. He was like a different person. But Shah Danon's mind was in a mess. He did not notice it. Wanren Wong said, "May I ask Sir Borsao, black pig, white pig, are they all pigs?" Shah Danon did not expect Wanren Wong would suddenly ask this. He startled, then said, "Of course." Wanren Wong continued, "Then lion, goat, tiger, rabbit, killing each other, are they all living beings? Is there a distinction between good and evil?" Shah Danon could faintly feel what he was going to say, but he still did not understand. So he said, "Yes." Wanren Wong snorted, said, "Then may I ask, sir, what you call good and evil, are they all human?" Shah Danon startled. He wanted to refute, but he could not find any words to say. So he said again, "Yes." Wanren Wong looked at him with a serious face, until Shah Danon's heart shivered. Then he slowly said, "Young Mr. Zhang, your Mount Jadian has a famous, world-shaking treasure, ancient sword retribution. Do you know about it?" Shah Danon's emotion was almost completely controlled by Wanren Wong. He unconsciously nodded. "Yes." Wanren Wong's face darkened, said sternly, "Then do you know, in the good and evil war thousands of years ago, retribution has killed many living beings, destroyed many lives? In this world, the esper that has killed the most people has the heaviest menace. I am afraid it is none other than the ancient sword retribution that you all worship as God." There was a loud buzz in Shah Danon's head. He stepped back uncontrollably, like he was punched in the face. At the same time, he felt, in the deep of his heart, there was something that was sacred and inviolable since he was young. After a clear echo, a small crack appeared for the first time. The bright sunlight shined down from the top of the tree, through the dense leaves, became little suns, fell on the ground. Along with the shaking of the leaves, it was like a naughty child, lightly jumping. Occasionally, a few spots of sunlight fell on the young man. Shah Danon squatted on the ground. In front of him was the fire stick that quietly lay on the ground. In the shadow, it looked ugly and ugly. What Wanren Wong said was actually not much different from what Bailu said in Kongsing Mountain. But when it came out from his mouth, Shah Danon felt it was very different. In the deep of his heart, there was a shadow, laughing coldly. "He is right, he is right." Wanren Wong sat calmly at the side, drinking the tea that had already cooled down. In the distance, the old tea stall owner glanced at him and then looked away. He didn't know that the young man here was in a turbulent sea of anger. After a long time, Shah Danon's face calmed down from the anxiety, struggle, and pain. He slowly reached out his hand, grabbed the fire stick on the ground, stood up, facing Wanren Wong, said coldly, "Who are you?" Wanren Wong returned to his casual style. The menace between his eyebrows was gone. He smiled lightly. "Me? I'm Wanren Wong, a mere mortal traveling the world." Shah Danon stared at him. His hand that held the fire stick tightened, said, "How can common man know so many things? Are you a heretic from Felkin?" Wanren Wong did not react, only looked at him, said lightly, "Good and evil, to you, is it really that important?" Shah Danon took a deep breath, said heavily, "Yes." Wanren Wong suddenly laughed coldly. "If so, then why are you still using the Felkin evil item in your hand?" Shah Danon's body shook, but his face was stern, said, "This fire stick may be the evil item, but I use it to kill the evil. It is the righteous path. I have a clear conscience, just like what you said about the ancient sword retribution in our faction." Wanren Wong startled for a moment, then slowly stood up and looked at Shah Danon. It was like he was seeing this person again. His lips even showed a smile, said, "You can think of this by yourself. Rare. Just this thought is better than your Jadian. No, most of the people in the world." Shah Danon ignored him, stared at him, said, "Who are you?" Wanren Wong did not answer him. Instead said, "You are going to the north. Is it to return to your Mount Jadian? Sha Danan, startled, said, What do you mean? Wanren Wong smiled. You still don't know. The Falcon have risen again. Their power increased greatly. Recently, they are gathering at East Sea Billows Hill. Many people from Jadian went there to meet with other factions. I'm afraid there's going to be a big battle. Why don't you go and have a look? Sha Danan, startled, said, There is such a thing? But then he raised his head, said, That is none of my business. I will ask you one more time. He stopped before he finished. At this moment, Wanren Wong disappeared like a ghost. Even the tea stall owner was gone. Only a lonely tea stall and Sha Danan was left. Sha Danan, startled, looked around. In broad daylight, for some reason, he felt a chill. He stood there for a long time, then he stomped his foot, walked out from the tree, and headed to the east. Not long after Sha Danan left, 3 people came out from behind the tree. One of them was Wanren Wong, another one was the tea stall owner, and the last one was the Falcon girl that Sha Danan would be surprised if he saw her, Bailu. Wanren Wong looked to the east, nodded slightly. A smile appeared on his lips. This young man is stubborn, his mind is firm, a bit like me in the past. The tea stall owner, standing next to him, was no longer that senile old man. His eyes were bright. His demeanor was fierce. He said, Sect leader, since he has our evil faction's precious treasure in his hands, why don't you keep him here? Wanren Wong was calm about being called faction head, said lightly. Sinister orb and soul-absorbing orb were merged by this young man with his blood, turned into a blood-forged item. Now, except for this young man, no one can use this esper. It is useless for us to steal it. Bailu snorted, said, I was wondering why this stick looked strange in Forsaken Abyss that day. So, it is such a great background. Wanren Wong turned to Bailu. His face was very gentle, said, Bailu, what do you think of this young man? Bailu blushed, said, Dad, it is your daughter who asked you to see what he is like. Wanren Wong laughed and said, This young man is not bad, just that he has been poisoned by Qing Yun's sect since young. To let him join our holy sect, with his stubborn character, I'm afraid it will be extremely difficult. Bailu's face darkened. She sighed quietly. Wanren Wong reached out his hand, gently stroked his daughter's hair, smiled. But he can untie the knot in your heart for many years. Let us father and daughter reconcile. We must return this favor. Bailu's expression changed, said happily, Dad, you have a way? Wanren Wong raised his head to look at the sky. A wave of power slowly spread out, showing that he was a person who held great power for a long time. But for some reason, looking at his face, there seemed to be a bit of sadness. He slowly said, To change a person's character, although it is not easy, but it is not impossible. Bailu was very happy. Wanren Wong turned around, saw it, and smiled. That expression was the same as all the fathers in this world who saw their daughter happy. Bailu smiled at her father, but noticed that the person next to her was frowning, whispered to Wanren Wong, Faction head, that is just a nameless boy from Jadian. Is it worth it for us to spend so much effort? Wanren Wong shook his head. That young man has a great evil treasure that has never been seen before. And looking at his appearance, he can control it freely. He will not be an ordinary person in the future. If we can recruit this kind of talent, it will be of great help to our hegemony. Not to mention, he also helped us father and daughter. Bailu nodded, said, Yes, I told him that day, if he can join our holy faction, Dad will value him. But he didn't listen. Wanren Wong laughed. Why would he listen? His character, and he grew up in Jadian, he already hated our holy faction. Just that. The sinister orb and the soul-absorbing orb were the most ominous objects in the world, although they were now inexplicably refined into blood-refined magical weapons by this young man. The evil energy was restrained and not leaked out, but these 2 ominous objects by his side, how could he not be affected? From what I see, this young man's cultivation is not deep enough, and he is with these evil items day and night. After a long time, he will be invaded by the evil energy inside the Esper. His character will change. He will become bloodthirsty. At that time, the righteous will not tolerate him. Then we will play a little trick. It will be hard for him not to join our holy faction. Then he laughed. Bailu was stunned. She couldn't tell if she was happy or worried. She was speechless. She could only look to the east. The sun was shining brightly, The sun was in the middle of the day. On the ancient path, the young man was long gone. Shah Danan left the tea stall, went to the east alone. It was noon, the sun shined on the earth. After Kongsang Mountain area, it was a fertile field, empty and few people. There was only one ancient path, which had been stepped on by many ancient and modern people. It stretched straight forward on this field. Shah Danan did not fly. Instead, he silently walked on the ancient path. The conversation with Wan Renwang just now had a great impact on his heart. Although he was speaking righteously to Wan Renwang, but at this moment, when he was alone, he couldn't help but ask himself, am I really right? The black fire stick was still quietly lying on his waist. Faintly, there was a sense of coldness coming from the stick. Walking under the sky, on the ancient path, the young man who was filled with worries suddenly stopped his steps, looked up at the sky. The sky was blue and high up in the sky. It looked so unreachable. Shah Danan stared at the sky. The corner of his mouth moved, his eyebrows frowned together. Quietly, he looked at the sky, like he was looking at someone's heart, softly said, "What is the purpose of people living in this world?" On the way, Shah Danan ate and slept in the open. Although he did not have much money, but when he was hungry, he would catch some wild birds and hares. When he was tired, he would find a tree to sleep for the night. Since he had been doing bamboo cutting homework on Bamboo Peak, his body was considered strong, so he did not feel tired. Actually, if he used the fire stick to fly in the air, it would naturally be much faster, but for some reason, he did not have such a plan. He always felt vexed. There were always those troubles entangled in his mind, so he would rather walk slowly, hoping to clear up the doubts in his mind. But speaking of that, the question in Shah Danan's mind, how could a young man like him understand it? No matter how hard he thought, he still felt the teachings of his master were sacred. Born like that, there is nothing wrong with it. But when he thought about what Wan Renwang said, it seemed there was some truth in it. He could not decide. He was really confused. If it was someone else, for example his sick senior brother Du Baishu, he would have laughed slyly and tossed it aside. Anyway, he was under Qing Yun's sect. Naturally, he would listen to Qing Yun's sect's words. And if it was his senior brother Xavion, his character was strict. He basically did not believe in this so-called evil Taoism. He would not even think about it. Only Shah Danan, whose character was more stubborn than anyone else, when he encountered the question that challenged his belief, he wanted to think about it and find out the answer. So he buried his head and thought hard, walked for 3 days, but still could not figure out the answer. Today, Shah Danan suddenly felt the number of people on the road increased. He looked ahead. There was a small town at the end of the ancient path. Although it was not big, but on the ancient path, there were a lot of people. Chapter 88. Shah Danan's heart was filled with joy. He temporarily forgot his worries. For the past 3 days, there were not many people on the road. Now that he saw such a small town, his spirit was lifted. Near the entrance, there was a stone tablet. The words Laguna Collective were engraved on it. That must be the name of the small town. Shah Danan walked into the town. The voices of the people were getting louder. The ancient road passed through the small town. There were houses and shops on the side of the road, but most of them were hawkers who set up their stalls on both sides of the road. Walking along the street, the sound of hawking could be heard. It was really a painting of the world. Shah Danan walked among the crowd. A smile appeared on his lips. When he was young, he still lived in Grass Temple Village. He vaguely remembered it was like this. Compared to the time of cultivation on Mount Jade, it seemed to have a different taste in his heart. Dang, 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 dang. When Shah Danan was still immersed in the memory of the past, a loud gong sound came from the street in front of him. It surprised him. Then he saw the townspeople quicken their pace and ran to the front. He heard some people talking while walking. "Let's go. The mayor has summoned us to speak." "I think it is that matter?" "Yeah, I heard the mayor, Li Baozhang, and Fan Xiaocai discuss for the whole night. I wonder if they have come up with a solution. Hope there is a solution, or else these days are really hard to live on." Shah Danan's curiosity was piqued, so he followed the crowd and walked forward. People gathered around him. Not long after, there were 200 or 300 people surrounding a stone platform in the center of the town. Shah Danan stood in the crowd and looked at the center. The stone platform was about half a person's height. It looked smooth. There were 3 people standing on it, 2 old and 1 young. They must be the mayor, Li Baozhong, and Fan Xiaocai. Seeing that most of the people had arrived, the oldest of the 3 men on the stone platform stood up and waved to the townspeople below. The townspeople gradually quietened down. When it was completely quiet, the old man looked around and said in a heavy tone, "Fellow villagers, I believe everyone knows why we have gathered here today. Since 3 months ago, that monster stayed at the Black Rock cave 5 kilometers away from the town, and since then he has been constantly harassing the town. In the recent month, he has become even more aggressive. He comes every night and has seized countless livestock. What's more, 3 days ago, the Wong father and son rebelled against him for the sake of the last cow in the family, and they were actually, alas, unfortunately, they died in the hands of that monster." The townspeople sighed, and a few of them even cursed out loud. Sha Danan understood most of it, but he still did not know what the devil was. At this time, the mayor continued, "As the mayor, the old man cannot guarantee the safety of this town. I am ashamed. Last night, after discussing with Head Guardly and Scholar Fan, we felt that since this evildoer is not ordinary, it is not something that ordinary people like us can handle. Why don't we put up a notice and invite some Taoist masters to come back and subdue this demon? As for the cost, I hope that everyone will support us." After he finished, the townspeople all said, "The mayor is right. We should invite the Taoist masters to come back and subdue the demon. If this goes on, then I'm afraid he'll be eaten by that monster. Would he care about that little bit of money?" Yes. The 3 people on the stage saw most of the townspeople agreed. The mayor seemed relieved, said, "If so, last night I also asked Scholar Fan to write a notice. Then I will put it up." As he finished speaking, he nodded at the young man who looked like a scholar. The scholar nodded and took out a piece of white paper from his bosom. There were some words written on it. He walked down the stone platform and walked to the side of the brick wall. He stuck the paper on it. The townspeople immediately crowded around it. Sha Danan also followed and saw the words on the paper. "Today there is a devil 3-tails fox spirit living in the Black Rock cave 10 miles away from the town. Comes out at night, harassing the town, plundering livestock, and even injuring people. Unfortunately, its evil magic is strong. Today, we invite a Taoist master to eliminate this evil for the people. Laguna Collective is willing to give 500 silvers as thanks." Sha Danan saw was signed by the townspeople of Laguna Collective. The surrounding townspeople all agreed. He hesitated for a moment. Originally, he wanted to do a good deed, but when he thought of what the townspeople and the mayor had said just now, this demon was probably very powerful. His magic power was weak, so it was a small matter if he couldn't defeat the demon. But if he accidentally lost his life, he would also lose face for his sect. That was something he couldn't afford to bear. While he was hesitating, he suddenly heard an uproar among the townspeople around him. He hurriedly looked up and was immediately startled. He saw a huge man walking over from outside. Wherever he went, he only needed to use his hands to push the crowd aside like water. When the giant man was near, Sha Danan could see him clearly. The man's age was not old, at most 20 years old. Thick eyebrows, big eyes, square face, and wide ears. Combined with his amazing body, a powerful aura came to Sha Danan. In the crowd, the tallest person was only up to his shoulder. He really stood out like a crane in a flock of chickens. He strode to the wall, read the notice carefully, then tore it down without saying anything. The crowd exclaimed. The giant man turned around and glanced at the townspeople. The townspeople immediately quieted down. The giant man said in a muffled voice, "I am Vajra faction Herald of Valor's only disciple, Onara. I am ordered by my master to come out for cultivation. Today, I am here to do a good deed for everyone." Sha Danan startled. He searched his mind, but could not find any cultivation faction like Vajra faction. The people around him all stared at him. At this time, the mayor and the others also rushed over. They walked to the front of this giant man who called himself Stone. The mayor cautiously said, "This warrior, that evildoer is very powerful. It's not, cough cough, it's not enough to just have great strength. It might even be life-threatening. Have you thought it through?" The giant man nodded, looked at the mayor, said in a muffled voice, "You don't believe me?" Being stared at by the giant eyes, the mayor's hair stood up. He forced himself to say, "No, no, I just want to remind you." The giant man turned his head and looked around. After a moment, his eyes landed on the wall with the notice. "Is this wall useful to you?" The mayor startled, then said, "Usually not useful, just to put up a notice." The giant named Stone chuckled and suddenly shouted, "Get out of the way!" His voice was like thunder. Shah Danan's ears were ringing, not to mention the other townspeople. They were all pale. After a moment, a large empty space was opened up. Only the giant man stood in the middle. He frowned, then suddenly stomped on the ground with his right foot, formed a mark with one hand, murmured a short incantation, then shouted, "Rise!" Whoosh! A gust of wind suddenly burst out from the giant man's body, whistling past everyone's ears, almost causing them to lose their footing. Everyone's faces paled, and they retreated a few more steps with a dang-dang-dang sound. Golden light rose. The giant man summoned a giant golden mace. He held it horizontally in midair. The word Shatterer was engraved on it. It looked a bit solemn. Everyone immediately cheered. Shah Danan stood in the crowd, frowned. He was taught the incantation Fawn Wisdom by Posey. Although there was no one to teach him, he secretly practiced it, so he knew a little bit about Buddhism cultivation. This huge man called Shurtu in front of him brandished this mace. The golden light was solemn and dignified. Looking at his casting gesture, it was somewhat similar to Puji's in the past. Most likely he had some origin with the Buddhism cultivation school. This shiny golden mace was incomparably huge, and it seemed to be even bigger than its owner. At this moment, Shurtu was controlling it in the air. Shida's eyes were wide open, and he pointed with his finger. The mace whistled through the air and smashed down. Everyone exclaimed, "Hong Long!" In the midst of the loud noise, dust flew everywhere. The originally perfectly fine brick wall, in a moment, under the power of his magic power, turned into powder. Wow! All the townsfolk present were dumbstruck, and then all of them beamed with joy. Since this giant man possessed such great strength, it was naturally easy for him to eliminate the three-tailed fox demon. The mayor was the first to walk out. He chuckled nonstop and said, "Hero Stone, you're really capable. I'll leave it to you then." Onara nodded. The mayor paused. A hint of hesitation flashed across his face, then said, "But there is one thing Hope Warrior Onara can understand." This robust man called Stone spoke in a low and muffled voice. At this moment, he still spoke like this. "Elder, please speak." The mayor said, "As for the reward, because it is the townspeople's hard-earned money, so I hope Warrior can get rid of the devil then." Unexpectedly, when Stone heard this, he waved his hand and said, "It's fine. Before I left, Master repeatedly told me that we're people of the righteous path, and when we encounter monstrous geniuses, then we should stand out bravely, without hesitation, and take it as tempering our own cultivation. As for the money, no need to mention it. You just need to give me a full meal, then I will have the strength to kill the devil." The mayor was overjoyed. It was great that there was such a good thing. He quickly said, Of course. Warrior, please follow me. We will definitely satisfy you." Shah Danan heard Onara's words. His heart was stirred. He felt ashamed. He thought his master and Shenyang used to teach their Shixiang like this. But when the time comes, he was afraid of it. He really lost his master's face. Thinking of this, his blood boiled. He felt he was a righteous faction. How could he ignore this matter? He was about to step out, reveal his identity, and go with Onara to kill the devil. Unexpectedly, just as his feet left the ground, he suddenly heard a voice beside him, with some anxiety, some eagerness, saying, "Ah, this little brother, your head is covered by dark clouds, your glabella is black, your face has a deathly aura. The situation is not good." Shah Danan was confident. The words were about to come out from his throat and do a righteous thing. But the words were suddenly said in his ear. He was startled and swallowed the words back. His foot was not careful. He stepped on the wrong place and stepped on a pile of dog poop. Shah Danan jumped up, but he felt his foot was stinky. Although it was under the sole of his shoe, his heart was cold, his body shivered. He turned his head hatefully, wanted to see who was the one who spoke. There was an old man standing beside him. His hair and beard were all white, and his face was plain and ordinary. He looked like a celestial being who had attained the Tao. At first glance, people would feel some respect for him. Beside the old man, there was a little girl around 8 or 9 years old. She had 2 braids and was very lively and cute. She was holding a stick of candied hawthorn in her hand and was eating it with relish. Shah Danan was stunned by the old man's elegance. He could not scold him. When he was thinking what to say, the old man looked at his foot. He did not look apologetic, but more urgent, said, you see, isn't this a big sign?" Shah Danan was surprised, said, "What?" The old man looked at him, said seriously, "Haven't you heard before? Step on dog poop, bad luck force on you. 9 out of 10 people die, bad luck fill the sky. This proverb?" Shah Danan was speechless, said, "No, I only heard Shi Xiang said that a person has great luck. That's why people will say he is lucky in dog poop." The old man was stunned for a moment. He shook his head repeatedly and said, "Foolish, foolish. You're simply spouting nonsense." Shah Danan asked, "What is it?" The old man said, "Since you said so, have you ever stepped on dog poop on purpose?" Shah Danan was surprised. He remembered when he was at Bamboo Peak, because he was the youngest, he often had to do some dirty work, and Master Tian Beli's big dog, Big Yella, was. He immediately shook his head. The old man nodded, said, "Have you ever seen someone step on dog poop on purpose?" Shah Danan shook his head, said, "There is no such thing." "That's right." The old man clapped his hands and said, "If there really is such a thing as dog shit luck, why would everyone avoid it? Moreover, dog shit is an extremely filthy thing. It stinks to the heavens, and everyone hates it. Once you step on it, isn't it bad luck but good luck?" Shah Danan felt what the old man said was very reasonable. It seemed he was wrong before. Then he remembered what the old man said was really alarmist. He could not help but cold sweat, said, "Then old man, you said I?" The old man frowned, looked at Shah Danan up and down. Shah Danan's heart was in a mess, then said, "Seems like you really have a big bad luck. Why don't you step aside? Let me read your fortune for you. What do you think?" "Read my fortune?" Shah Danan startled. Then he noticed the old man was holding a bamboo pole. There was a piece of white cloth on it, with 4 words written on it, "Celestial Guide." So he is a fortune teller. But even so, Shah Danan did not look down on him. The reason is that the founder of Jade, was also a fortune teller. Of course, no one in Jade knows about fortune teller, but Jade has always been friendly to fortune tellers, or else it would be like deceiving the master and destroying the ancestors. Shah Danan hesitated for a moment, but found when he was talking with the old man, the townspeople had already walked far away with a giant man called Onara. He calmed himself down, thought it is fine to let the old man read his fortune first. The mayor also said to let the giant man eat his fill before killing the devil. It seems like there is still time. Thinking of this, he turned his head and said to the old man, "All right then, I'll have to trouble you to take a look at my face." The old man laughed, pointed at a big tree next to the road, said, "Then we'll talk there." Then he turned and walked away. Shah Danan was about to follow. Suddenly a clear voice said, "The Gidge." Shah Danan startled. It was the little girl who was eating candied haws next to the old man. She called him for some reason. Shah Danan looked at her rosy face, very cute, smiled and bent down, said, "What is it, little sister?" The little girl chewed, spat out a few stones, looked at Shah Danan, said with a smile, "There is dog poop under your feet, very smelly." "Ah!" Shah Danan's face turned red, jumped up, shook his feet desperately to get rid of the dirt on his shoes. Seeing his sorry figure, the little girl chuckled, turned around, and skipped over to the old man, standing under the tree. Chapter 89. Shah Danan turned around and saw the little girl had walked to the side of the old man. She said something to the old man. The old man nodded slightly, a smile on his lips. Shah Danan blushed, not sure if they were laughing at him. He hesitated, then walked to them, said, "Old mister, may I ask what you mean when you said I have a bad face?" The old man narrowed his eyes, looked at him, smiled. "Young mister, although your forehead is full, but your cheeks are thin, You are not from a rich family, right? Shah Danan trusted him a little more, nodded. Old Mister is right. I am from a farmer family. The old man smiled and lightly patted his robe. With a calm demeanor, he said, This old man also noticed that your eyebrows are thick and dense, straight, but there's a small mole at the end of your right eyebrow. This is Master's parents. I'm afraid your parents are no longer in this world, right? Shah Danan was surprised, then trusted him a little more, nodded. Old Mister, you really have good eyes. My parents died when I was young. The old man smiled. Why don't young Mister reach out your hand for me to see? Shah Danan had already trusted him a little more. He reached out his hand. The old man was about to take a look, but the little girl suddenly came and grabbed Shah Danan's hand. Shah Danan was surprised, but the little girl imitated her grandpa, looked at his hand, laughed, then ran away again. But Shah Danan's hand was left with a few pieces of sweet sugar, very uncomfortable. Shah Danan was startled, but he could not scold a child, so he could only blame his bad luck. The old man handed him a handkerchief, smiled. My granddaughter is naughty. Young Mister, please don't blame her. Shah Danan smiled bitterly, wiped his hand with the handkerchief. He raised his head and saw the old man and his granddaughter were standing together, talking and laughing, not knowing what they were talking about. The old man saw Shah Danan was looking at him. He smiled. Good. Then let me read young brother's palm. Shah Danan reached out his hand, but his eyes were staring at the little girl, afraid she would mess it up again. But the little girl seemed to be very quiet. She was looking at Shah Danan and giggling. What is she laughing at? The old man looked at it for a moment. Then his face suddenly changed, and he exclaimed, Shah Danan was surprised, said what? The old man did not say much, only used his hand to point at Shah Danan's palm, said, Young Mister, can you see your destiny line? Shah Danan glanced at it. Of course he did not know what it was, said blankly, What? The old man's expression was solemn as he said, I can see that your lifeline is different from that of an ordinary person. From the very beginning, there is a huge flaw. You must have encountered a great disaster when you were young, and this disaster is extremely deep and great. Most likely, your family and friends are also involved in it, and your chances of survival are slim. From the looks of it, I'm afraid your father and mother have most likely passed away during this tribulation. Shah Danan's heart was sour. He completely believed the old man, said bitterly, Old Mister, you are really a living god. What you said is absolutely correct. The old man sighed and said, Originally, even you wouldn't be able to escape from such a disaster. But your fate is blessed. In this big gap, there is a jade lattice, allowing you to continue your fate and extend your life. It can be considered a great fortune in misfortune. Posy's face suddenly appeared in Shah Danan's mind. After a moment of silence, he gritted his teeth, said, Today, old Mister said, I still have a bad sign. Don't know what will happen to me. Please enlighten me. The old man smiled, then suddenly coughed twice, said, This. Shah Danan was surprised, said, What is it, old Mister? The old man smiled, said, To be honest, when I started my cultivation, I have set a rule that people must pay for fortune-telling, so. Shah Danan quickly said, Old Mister, please tell me, how much? The old man looked at him with a smile, said, 10 silvers each time. Shah Danan's hand was already at his waist. He was startled, said, So expensive, but I only have 4 silvers. The old man frowned, then said, Fine, for silvers it is. Today, I have fate with young Mister. I will help you. Shah Danan was very grateful. There was no use for the silvers on him anyway. He could deal with it in the wild. He immediately gave the 4 silvers to the old man. The old man put away the silvers, then carefully looked at Shah Danan's face, said, Young Mister, I see your glabella is dark, like dark clouds covering your head. Obviously your luck is not good. The road ahead will be dangerous. Why don't you turn back? Then everything will be resolved. Shah Danan was surprised, said, That's it? The old man nodded. That's right. Shah Danan hesitated, but I have an urgent matter to go to the east. The old man advised, Young Mister, nothing could be more important than your own life. You should turn back. Then he saluted, said, It is fate that we meet in the martial world. We will meet again in the future. Goodbye. Shah Danon frowned, nodded blankly, watching the old man and the young man go far away. He seemed to be lost in the flow of people. At the corner of the street, the old man and the little girl hid at the same time. They turned around and looked at Shah Danon. The young man was standing in the flow of people. His face was a bit confused. After a while, he turned around and walked forward. He got another 4 silvers. The old man's demeanor suddenly changed. He took out the silver from his waist and looked at it carefully. He couldn't stop laughing. On the other hand, the little girl looked calm. She glanced at him and said, "Grandpa, why are you acting like this again?" The old man laughed, put away the silvers, smiled to his granddaughter. "Tani, I didn't give birth to a granddaughter like you in vain. You are not even 10 years old, but you can already see through a person's life. In the future, you will be an outstanding talent in the study of physiognomy." The little girl called Tani snorted. "What's so difficult about those shallow physiognomy books? It is obviously Grandpa who did not work hard, and you still have the nerve to say that." It turned out the one with real ability among the two of them was the little girl. She could see through Shah Danon's life and told it to her grandpa. The old man obviously doted on his granddaughter very much. He didn't mind what she said. He smiled and said, "Don't look down on the physiognomy books that Grandpa showed you. 9 divination and Jade pillar physiognomy were passed down by our ancestor, Qin Yunzi. You're talented and have a unique talent for physiognomy. If it was someone else, like Grandpa me, I wouldn't know what's going on even after reading it for a lifetime." Tani spat at him, turned around, but Shah Danon was already gone. She turned back and said, "Then you said his future is dangerous. What is it?" The old man laughed. "Of course I lied to him. But look at his face. How is his future? Is it really a disaster?" Tani shook her head, said, "I only understood past life physiognomy. As for future physiognomy, I only touched the surface, not sure." The old man nodded. "That's right. Past life physiognomy is the past, cannot be changed, of course it is good. Future physiognomy is the unknown future. It is the highest level of physiognomy. How can it be so easy?" Xiao Huan shrugged her shoulders, walked forward with the two of them, said, "But for what I know, that person's countenance and divination seem to be very strange. It was one of the most difficult divination recorded in the books. Chaotic devil divination, this is very rare. Don't care about him. Since we got the money, Grandpa will take you to eat." TSK. "That's right, Grandpa. You mentioned Ancestor Qinyanzi just now. Didn't you always say that we and Qinyan sect are from the same sect? Why don't we go and acknowledge our kin? With Qinyan sect's current status, plus your seniority, wouldn't you be able to eat and drink well?" "Shoo." That old man was startled, looked around, seeing that no one was paying attention. He then relaxed, softly said, "Little girl, what do you know? Qinyan sect is now the world-famous cultivation big sect. What we know is only a little bit of Ancestor Qin Yunzi's knowledge of physiognomy. If we rashly acknowledge relatives, I'm afraid they will treat us as swindlers and lock us up on Qinyan Hill for 200 years. Moreover," he smiled faintly, the sage-like temperament that he had. When he was talking with Shah Danon, said, Tanis Ka, is not a person who fawns on the rich." Tani, startled, said happily, "Grandpa, I can't believe you have such backbone. It is really difficult." Before she finished, Tanis-Ka's eyes lit up. He took a step forward and blocked the way of a fat lady who was walking over, wearing gold and silver accessories. He sternly said, "Madam, I see you are covered by dark clouds. Your glabella is black. Your face has the air of death. Things are not good. Why don't let me read your physiognomy for you? What do you think?" Tani was speechless, but Grandpa kept signaling her with his eyes. She had to follow them, pretended to be cute and innocent, and carefully read the fat woman's physiognomy. Shah Danon walked through the street, unknowingly walked out of the small town. He stayed in the town for a while. Then he realized it was already dusk. Chapter 90. The setting sun shone on the horizon, making the sunset glow like fire and elongating his shadow. At this moment, it was already dinner time. Every family was walking home, and there was not a single person outside the small town. He was the only one left, and he was very lonely. He looked at his own shadow and felt a wave of confusion in his heart. Ever since he heard from Wanderlust that the Orthodox Zionist sects would go to Liobwa Mountain, he guessed that his master Tion Belize would also go. He wanted to meet them, but today he met an old immortal who told him not to go. But should he go back to Jade Cloud Mountain? What if when he got there, his master was not there? What should he do? After escaping from the Dead Soul Abyss in Kongsang Mountain, he wanted to see his master and master's wife as soon as possible to tell them he was safe. But these days he was full of thoughts, so he was slow. But now that he was suddenly asked to turn back, he couldn't make up his mind. While he was hesitating, he suddenly heard a sound of footsteps behind him. He turned his head and saw that it was the giant man, Sure-Tu. He was striding out of the town alone. He walked closer, stopped, looked at Shah Danan, but didn't care. He looked at the setting sun in the west and said to himself, "The sun is in the west." The mayor said the Black Rock Cave is 10 miles north of the town, then it is in this direction. Finding the right direction, he was about to walk. Shah Danan heard this and said, "Stone, warrior, are you going to Black Rock Cave?" Stone was stunned for a moment, stopped, turned his head to look at Shah Danan, said, "Yes, who are you?" Shah Danan thought, "Since I can't go to the east, why not go with this person to get rid of the demon? In the future, when Master asks, I can say I did a good deed. It will be easier to explain in front of Master." Since he made up his mind, he smiled and said, "I am also a Zionist. I saw everything in pawn during the day. I wanted to get rid of the demon for the townspeople like you, but I was delayed by something. Fortunately, it is not too late. Would you like to go with me?" Stonehead looked Shah Danan up and down, said in a low, muffled voice, "That place is not fun. It is quite risky. I see that you're not old. Which sect are you from?" Shah Danan was startled for a moment. Seeing that Sure-Tu was not that old, and was born simple and honest, he did not expect him to say such words. He smiled and said, "I am a disciple of Jadian Bamboo Peak's first seat, Tion Belize. My cultivation is shallow. Please take care of me, Brother Sure." Stone was shocked. His eyes widened as he asked in astonishment, "What? You're actually a disciple of the Blue Cloud sect?" Shah Danan nodded. "Exactly." Stone's eyes were filled with envy as he said, "Ah, excuse me. The Azure Cloud sect was the #1 righteous cultivation sect in the world. They had long heard that the Azure Cloud Tao technique was profound and mysterious, and everyone respected it. Please forgive me for offending you earlier." Shah Danan was stunned for a moment, but he couldn't help but feel happy. He didn't expect his sect's reputation to be so big. He smiled and said, "Brother Sure, you flatter me. Why don't we go together? We can help each other when we get rid of evil." Stone chuckled and said, "Sure." Black Rock Cave was located in a forest 10 miles north of Pond. On the way, Shah Danan and Stone talked to each other by name. Shah Danan was simple and honest, while Stone was huge, but not overbearing. Like his appearance, he was also simple and honest. The two got along very well, and soon called each other by name. At this time, the sky had gradually darkened. The afterglow of the sun was faintly sprinkling on the ground. Shah Danan looked at the trees in front of him that were gradually becoming lush. He estimated that they would arrive at the forest soon. He said, "Brother Sure." Beside him, Sure-Tu replied, "What?" Shah Danan said, "I saw the golden mace magic weapon you used during the day. It looked dignified, and the spell seemed to belong to Buddhism. Although I have heard that there is no magic weapon like the mace in Buddhism, I always feel that it is a Buddhist treasure. I don't know if it is." Stone's eyes flashed with admiration, said, "Xiao Fan, you are indeed a disciple of Jadian. You are very knowledgeable." Shah Danan's face reddened. The stone continued, "My Vajra sect has very few descendants. For several generations, only one branch has been passed down. My master, Great Strength Venerable, met me in a small, remote village. He said that I was a talented person who practiced the Vajra sect's Taoist techniques, so he enlightened me to practice Taoism. He once told me that the Vajra school's origin is indeed related to Buddhism. But it was too long ago, no one can remember. Moreover, the incantation has been passed down from generation to generation, so it is very different. It cannot be compared to today's Orthodox Buddhist temple of Sound of Heaven." When he spoke up to this point, Stone paused for a moment and then a simple and honest smile appeared on his face as he said, "However, my master also said that even though our cultivation is low, we lack the restrictions of the Buddhist sect's precepts. As cultivators, we naturally have to do virtuous things for the world. So, if we encounter a monster that runs amok, we should act." Shah Danan admired. "Ah, your master is really a master." Stone nodded. "Yes, my master is very decent." Shah Danan smiled without saying anything, but at this moment, his heart suddenly moved. Inexplicably, he remembered the conversation he had with Wan Renwang that day. He thought to himself, if someone like Stone's master knew that the magic weapon I use is such an evil thing, I'm afraid he wouldn't allow his disciple to be with me. That being said, even the elders of the Blue Cloud sect would most likely detest this kind of evil creature. Then, what about me, the one who uses this evil thing? Could it be that I'm already an evil person? Shah Danan was silent. Stone thought that Shah Danan saw that they were about to reach the Black Rock Cave, so he didn't care. He also checked his body, preparing to fight that monster. The sky finally darkened. When the first star quietly peeked out from the horizon, the two arrived outside a small forest. Stone took a deep breath and said to Shah Danan, "I heard the mayor say that the Black Rock Cave is in this forest. The cave is rich in black rock. In the past, the townspeople often came here to mine and build roads. Naturally, they don't come here anymore. I heard that the cave extends downwards unfathomably deep. We have to be careful." Shah Danan nodded, thought, no matter how deep it is, it won't be as deep as the Dead Soul Abyss under the Thousand Bat Cave in Sang Mountain. The two of them immediately packed up and were about to step into this dangerous place. But suddenly at this moment, a slightly panicked cry came from 100 feet away. "Ah!" The two were startled, turned around, and Shah Danan was immediately shocked. He saw two people running from the right, one old and one young. It was the grandparent and grandchild who read his fortune during the day. At this moment, the little girl was fine, but the old man was panting. Where was the slightest trace of the old man? Shah Danan went up, stopped in front of them, and said, "You two, what's wrong?" Zhou Yixian was running anxiously when suddenly someone flashed in front of his eyes. He jumped in fright, but when he looked carefully, he realized it was that dumb kid from earlier in the day. Only then did he set his heart at ease. He looked back, but saw that the road was quiet. Not even a shadow could be seen. Zhou Yixian let out a deep breath and stopped his footsteps. He said to his granddaughter Xiao Huan, "Xiao Huan, don't run. It seems that person did not pursue us." Xiao Huan gasped for breath, but she was still holding a stick of candied haws in her hand. It seemed that she liked this kind of sweet food very much. Hearing Zhou Yixian's words, she ran forward for a while before stopping and gasping for breath. At this time, Stone also came over and stood next to Shah Danan. Seeing the old and young like stray dogs, he was surprised. "What's wrong?" Shah Danan had the same question, but before he could open his mouth, he heard Huan complain loudly. "It's all your fault, Grandpa. It's not enough to fool that fat woman, but you also went to look at that young woman. I saw it early on. That woman is very smart. How can we fool her?" Zhou Yixian said angrily. "Then why didn't you say so earlier? You made Grandpa get slapped by that woman. It still hurts now. If this old man didn't have the ancestors' secret earth escape technique, by now I would have." Before his voice died away, suddenly a clear shout came from the night sky. "Old liar! Where are you running to?" Everyone was shocked. They saw a white light like lightning, as if it was refracted from the sky, straight toward Zhou Yixian. Zhou Yixian didn't know any cultivation methods, so he was caught off guard. Even if he had some unorthodox methods, he didn't have time to use them. He was about to be hit by the white light. Shah Danan watched from the side. After all, he had some friendship with Gu, so he could not save him. And in a moment of desperation, although he heard their words just now, faintly felt that he was deceived by the two of them, but at this moment he didn't think so much. He waved his hand, and the fire stick rushed out like lightning and blocked for him. Bang! A loud sound, the white light was blocked back. A slightly surprised female voice came from the sky, and then where the white light passed, a woman fell in front of everyone. A moment later, Shah Danan was stunned. He saw that the woman was wearing a light green dress, with a small golden bell hanging from her waist, making a crisp sound. Between her fingers was a small white flower, crystal clear like jade. At this moment, she had a smile on her face, and she didn't look at Shaw Dannon anymore. Her pair of bright eyes only looked at Shaw Dannon. She softly laughed. What a coincidence, Shaw Dannon. But if it wasn't the demon sect girl Biao, who was it? Chapter 91. Shaw Dannon startled. He never expected to see her again so soon. He wanted to deny it, but after all they experienced life and death together in Forsaken Abyss Blooddrop Cave, there was still a trace of feeling in his heart. He smiled embarrassedly, said, "Why are you here?" Onara saw Shaw Dannon's strange expression, asked curiously, "Xiao Fan, who is that?" Shaw Dannon blurted out, "She is Dash." Then he realized, if people know Bailu's identity, plus his relationship with Bailu, it will be a lot of trouble. The words were about to come out, but he took it back. Onara was puzzled by Shaw Dannon's hesitation, but Bailu already smiled. "Don't ask him. We just met for the first time. He does not know my background." Onara understood, but seeing Shaw Dannon's expression, he smiled strangely, reached to Shaw Dannon's ear, and whispered, "Brother Zhang, I see your expression is not right. Are you interested in that lady?" Shaw Dannon was surprised. His face turned pale, said urgently, "You must not say that. I have nothing to do with her." Bailu was standing there looking at him with a smile, but after hearing what he said, her face suddenly darkened. She snorted and sneered. "That's right. How could I be related to this shameless, despicable guy?" Everyone startled. They remembered when she saw Shaw Dannon. She was surprised, but now she changed her face faster than turning a page of a book. In addition, she said shameless, despicable. At that moment, everyone looked at Shaw Dannon with strange eyes. Shaw Dannon was embarrassed, but did not know how to explain. But from everyone's point of view, they thought it was a couple of lovers quarreling, so they all laughed. Onara looked at the sky, said to Shaw Dannon, "Brother Zhang, it is late. Let us go in." Shaw Dannon was eager to get away from this awkward situation. He quickly agreed. While they were talking, suddenly Bila shouted, "Old liar, stop right there." They turned around. Tanis Ka and Tani were about to slip away when no one was paying attention, but Bailu saw them. Seeing heart-ending flower in Bailu's hand glowed with white light. The cold air increased. Shaw Dannon was surprised. He quickly stopped, said, "Wait, how did they annoy you?" Bila glanced at Shaw Dannon. It seemed she was still angry. She said coldly, "None of her business." Shaw Dannon was rejected. His heart was gloomy. But Tanis Ka had suffered a lot from Bailu. Now that there was finally someone who stood up for him, he would not let it go. He quickly said, "Young mister, you need to save me. Just now, when I was in the small town, I was kind enough to help this lady read her fortune. Unexpectedly, she didn't listen to the truth. When she didn't get what she wanted, she actually used force on us." Bai Yao angrily said, "Nonsense, you old liar, full of nonsense, swindling people's money, and now you dare to frame me. Looking for a beating." Then, she formed the incantation mark on her hand. Heart-tending flower's white light brightened the surrounding like daytime. She was about to attack. Shaw Dannon hurriedly said, "Bailu, wait." Unexpectedly, Bai Yao did not seem to hear and did not speak. In a short while, the heart-take flower left her hand, flashed in the air, flashed twice, and flashed again. A light sound was heard. In that instant, the white light was dazzling. The bright moon and stars in the sky all lost their colors. The sky was filled with flowers. Dazzling, the fragrance filled the nose, whistling over. This was a rare sight. Unexpectedly, Tanis Isian looked like he saw a ghost, turned pale with fright, pulled Tani and ran. His right hand reached into his bosom, took out a piece of yellow paper. Looking from afar, it looked like the talisman paper used by the common Taoists to catch ghosts and perform Taoist rituals. Shaw Dannon had seen the power of Bailu's Esper in Forsaken Abyss, and Tanis Ka did not seem to know any cultivation. He could not bear it, so he stepped out and stood in front of Tanis Ka and granddaughter. He took out the fire stick and was going to help Tanis Ka. But when Bailu saw Shaw Dannon suddenly jumped out, she frowned, but a smile appeared on her jade-like face. The flower in the sky suddenly stopped in midair, danced 1 yard in front of Shaw Danon, did not move forward. Her face was still cold, said coldly, "What are you doing?" Shaw Danon looked at her. His heart was a little guilty. He murmured, "They're not cultivators. Why are you making it difficult for them? Just let it go." Bailu snorted, waved her hand. The flower in the sky suddenly retracted. Under the light of the moon and stars, the flower reformed into a white flower and flew back to her hand. "Then why don't you ask him what is going on?" Shaw Danon was also curious. He turned to Tanniska and asked. Tanniska was trying to blur the right and wrong, but Bailu interrupted and coldly asked the key points. After a while, Shaw Danon and Onara understood. After Tanniska successfully earned a sum of money from the fat woman, he was too greedy. Seeing Bailu's expensive clothing, he did not care about Tani's signal to stop him and went closer. But Bailu was extremely smart. Normal people could not compare to her. How could she be tricked by him with just a few words? In the beginning, because Tani had a good eye, she was almost right about Bailu's past. But when Bailu asked carefully, Tani could not tell Zhou Isian directly. Zhou Isian was full of nonsense and exposed the flaw. Bailu was furious and wanted to teach these two liars a lesson. Tanniska saw the situation was not right. He got into big trouble. He knew nothing about cultivation, but he still had some life-saving skills passed down by Jade and Z when he was roaming the world. One of them was the Taoist talisman Earth Escape, so he was able to temporarily escape. But his cultivation was not enough. He could not grasp the direction and landed near Shaw Danon and Onara. As for Bailu, she did not expect this old man to have this trick, but she was the only daughter of the head of the evil sect, Ghost King sect. How could this Jianghu trick be difficult for her? She only needed to use her special skills to search the surroundings and immediately found this old liar's location. In a blink of an eye, she chased over. Shaw Danon, startled for a moment, stared at Tanniska, said, "So the dangerous thing you told me today is also a lie?" Tanniska rolled his eyes, but before he could speak, Bailu could not help but laugh. "So you fell into his trick?" This laugh immediately melted her frosty expression. Shaw Danon was embarrassed, thinking it was not worth it to stand up for him this time. And it was even more embarrassing in front of Bailu. He straightened his face and was about to leave. Tanniska was surprised, complained in his heart. Onara saw the awkward situation. He reminded Shaw Danon, "Brother Zhang, why don't we go in? Business is more important." Shaw Danon nodded, then ignored the others and was about to enter the forest with Onara. Bailu, startled, asked, "This forest is filled with devil energy. What are you two going in for?" Shaw Danon said, "We are going in to kill the devil." Then, he pulled Shirtu and walked in with quick steps. Onara looked at the grandpa, and Bailu then followed in. The scene immediately became quiet. Bailu turned around with a cold face. Tanniska immediately put his hand on his chest, acted like he was going to block. But whether he could block it is another matter. Bailu did not move. She pondered for a moment, then asked Tanniska, "Do you know what they're going to do in there?" Tanniska startled. He was also in Laguna Collective during the day. Of course, he knew the reason. He said, "I know. There is a dark drake cave in the forest. There is a three-tails fox spirit inside. They're going to kill the devil for Laguna Collective. What about it?" Bailu snorted. Her eyes slightly drooped down. Her mouth spoke in a low voice. That little bit of cultivation, actually. Tanniska saw she was standing there in a daze. How can he let go of such a great opportunity? He pulled Tani's hand and walked away quietly. When Bailu regained her consciousness, they were already far away. She could only see their backs. With Bailu's ability, it is easy to catch up with them. But she did not seem to have that intention. Instead, she turned around, staring at the dark forest in the moonlight, lost in thought. Chapter 92. Shaw Danon and Onara walked into the forest. The trees were tall, the leaves were luxuriant, blocked the moonlight, the forest was dark. As they walked, the surroundings were quiet. From the deep of the forest, there seemed to be a thin veil of mist. They looked at each other. Onara said quietly, "Careful." Shaw Danon nodded. They both summoned their esper, prepared themselves, and walked forward. After a while, they saw the ancient trees towering into the sky, waves of energy. It seemed they had reached the deep of the forest. At this moment, they suddenly heard a gentle and somewhat melancholic voice of a woman drifting in the forest ahead of them. Shaosong Hill, moon like frost, people are like floating flower, also sad. Dozens of years, 3,000 years. Hope we do not forget each other. The female voice was gentle, softly moaning. Although the figure could not be seen, there was a faint sense of sadness. Sha Danon and Onara looked at each other. Their face changed. In the middle of the night, in this desolate place, most likely it was a ghost. They carefully walked toward the source of the voice. The thin mist drifted gently, gradually enveloping the two of them. Not long after they entered, a green shadow flashed. Bailu appeared at the place where they were standing. She looked at the mist and the darkness, frowned. After pondering for a moment, she entered into the mist. The night in the forest was hazy in the darkness. Occasionally a few inches of moonlight fell through the gap of the leaves, shined on the shrubs, gently swaying. Around them, there was only the sound of insect from far away. Suddenly, Onara pulled Sha Danon. Sha Danon was surprised, said, "What?" Onara said quietly, "Listen." Sha Danon listened attentively. He heard a faint sigh coming from the front, a beam of moonlight, like a beam of bright light in the darkness. A beam of frost gently shined on the mist, gently floating. From the deep of the darkness, a woman in white slowly walked out, stood in the light, looked at them. Sha Danon and Onara held their breath. She was an extremely gentle and charming woman. Her long and straight hair was not tied up and draped over her shoulders. Her skin was fair, and she had graceful eyebrows, a delicate nose, and faint red lips. Her eyes were like water, and when she looked over, it was as if she could see through the depths of their hearts. She was a woman who made people feel sorry for her. She stood there timidly in the moonlight, staring at them. Tom seemed to have stopped at that moment. "Are you here to kill me?" she asked faintly. Sha Danon and Onara were surprised. Onara bit his lips, calmed his mind, shouted, "Are you the devil three-tails, fox spirit?" Her watery eyes glanced at Onara, then at Sha Danon's face. At that moment, Sha Danon felt like a gentle hand was caressing his face. He was shocked. He didn't expect there to be such a seductive woman in this world. She really didn't seem like a human. She did not answer, only frowned. There seemed to be a kind of sadness engraved between her eyebrows. She raised her head and looked at the moon. The moon was flawless, hanging in the sky. "It is me," she said faintly. The night was dark. In the darkness behind her, there seemed to be something quietly throbbing. Onara's face darkened. The large golden mace shatterer in his hand gradually brightened. The forest around them also turned into gold. Sha Danon stood next to him, also took a deep breath. However, the woman did not seem to have much of a reaction. She glanced at them and lightly moved to the side. Her snow-white sleeves gently waved, and the two saw the shrubs move aside, revealing a well. From far, the stone beside the well was old and covered with moss. It seemed like it was quite old. She walked to the edge of the well and looked down, gently combing her beautiful hair with her hand. Both of them saw her strange behavior. They did not dare to move. The voice of the woman drifted through the forest. "This is an ancient well that has existed for 3,000 years. Legend has it that as long as one has a sincere wish and looks into it on a full moon night, one will be able to obtain their wish." Her voice was a bit sad, but since I came here, I have looked at it 3 times. "Why? His illness still not better?" Sha Danon and Onara were surprised. From her expression and words, it was clear she was a sad woman who was trapped by love. But Onara was much firmer than Sha Danon on this matter. He frowned, stepped forward. The wind rose in the forest. He said angrily, "Shameless evildoer, you dare to confuse the people. Quickly come and receive your death." The woman turned her head. Her watery eyes looked at them. She ignored Onara, but looked at Sha Danon a few more times. She suddenly said softly, "In your heart, is there a woman that you deeply miss? Then come have a look." The wind passed through the forest. The chill suddenly increased. The branches of the tree rustled. Sha Danon's heart was confused. He unconsciously stepped forward. Shirtu was shocked and didn't say anything more. His entire body soared into the air, and a shattering fiend golden light shone brightly. With a whistling sound, he smashed down on the woman's head. Looking at the ferocious momentum, not to mention a delicate woman, even a strong man would be turned into minced meat. But the woman's body was like a fallen leaf, blown up by the strong wind of Shatterer. She dodged the earth-shattering strike. Then she floated in midair, her sleeves fluttered, opened suddenly. In a moment, the evil energy in the forest increased greatly. The evil howled. In the darkness behind her, at the same time, countless of ferocious giant eyes opened at the same time. While Onara was concentrating, he heard countless of wild howls. A black mass of ferocious shadow leaped out from the darkness, past the white figure of the woman, and charged at Onara. And that woman, at this moment, did not look at Onara. Her pair of gentle eyes was only looking at Shah Danon, who was approaching the ancient well step by step. The moonlight shined on his body, like frost, like snow. Deep in his heart, is there a person that he cares about deeply? He was intoxicated. Xiao Fan. A scream came from behind. Bailu appeared, quickly flew to him, said urgently, "Don't look." At that moment, Shah Danon startled for a moment. The gentle lady who was floating in midair watching him. Her face also changed. But then, he still continued to look. Just like that, he continued to look. The sound of the wind suddenly stopped. Everyone held their breath. What did he see? Onara roared, shook off the surrounding evil spirits. His large body grabbed the Esper Shatterer. The red light flashed on his face, then flashed 3 times. His face seemed like blood was about to drip out. He soared into the sky, then suddenly fell down, like an arrow leaving the bow. Puff! Shatterer deeply stabbed into the ground. At the same time, he let out a heaven-shaking shout. Break! The entire world seemed to be still for a moment. The land within the radius of 20 feet suddenly sank. Even the trees on it, like they were pulled into the ground by an invisible giant hand. Only near the well, where Shah Danon was, the trees were not affected. The shattering evil staff that was inserted into the ground suddenly seemed to have absorbed something. The entire staff shone with a dazzling brilliance. As Stone shouted the word shattering, countless beams of light shot out like lightning towards those black demons that were flying in the air. For a moment, miserable screams and screams were heard. Those demons that were hit either fell to the ground or directly evaporated into nothingness. The gentlewoman's face changed. Her face also paled, said, "Absorb the essence of earth, and would to destroy evil power, Shatterer's staff." After Onara finished off the evil spirits, he immediately looked at Shah Danon. Bailu also stopped and looked at him. Shah Danon slowly raised his head. His face did not seem to have any abnormality, just a little bit confused. Then he woke up, took a deep breath, stood next to Onara, facing the gentle woman floating in midair. The woman looked at him deeply, suddenly said, "What did you see?" Chapter 93. Far away, in the darkness of the forest, Tanizka and Tani were quietly hiding behind the tall trees, watching the people in the field. Tani frowned, whispered, "Grandpa, why are you not running away, but come back to this dangerous place to watch the show?" Tanizka's eyes were still watching the field, whispered, "I heard there are many treasures in a monster's cave, but I could not do anything about it. Today there are so many people helping us to open it. How can we not come and see? Maybe we can get something." Tani's pale face said grumpily, "What if we didn't get anything, but ran into a monster?" Tanizka turned his head and said with a smile, no problem, Grandpa. I have the earth escape, water escape, 1,000 miles escape secret taught by Master Qing Yanzi. There is absolutely no problem." Tani said in a low voice, "Humph, it is obviously a thing to cheat money and run away. Why are you still talking about cover?" Amazing art. Tanizka did not notice what his granddaughter said, still proudly said, "And didn't you read Grandpa's fortune before? You said Grandpa's forehead is full. There's a gold coin pattern between your eyebrows, and the fortune line is straight and thick, the face of great wealth." Hee hee. It will come true tonight. Tani, Grandpa is very confident in your fortune-reading skill. Tani, huh? Tannis was surprised, turned his head, and looked at the field. Shah Danon was already close to them. The fire stick was glowing with black light, charging at the gentle lady. Pure essence. This young man is from Jade. What? Xiao Huan heard this and immediately became interested. She also looked at the scene and saw the demonic sound were loud. Both sides were fighting. She asked Tannis. So he is from the same ancestor as us. Is he powerful? Tannis focused his attention. The greedy smile on his face faded away. His face became calm, frowned. This young man is not old, but his power seems to have reached Yu Qing's 5th level. Strange? Tani looked at Grandpa. Others may not know, but she knew Tannis was greedy for money, but he had been wandering all his life. His knowledge was not small. She said, "Can't tell this person is a genius." Xiao Huan glanced at her grandfather. Others did not know, but she knew that although Zhou Yixian was greedy for money, but he had been wandering his life, his knowledge was not a small matter. She said, "Can't tell that this person is a genius." Tannis was silent for a moment, then slightly shook his head and said, "I think this young man's aptitude is not bad, but at most it is above average. He is definitely not a prodigy like Ancestor Qingyi. Logically speaking, with his aptitude, it is impossible for him to advance in cultivation so fast." Xiao Huan was stunned and did not know what to say. She could only turn her head and continue to watch the scene. Stone angrily shouted from the ground. Golden light flickered, evading in all directions. Shah Danon rose into the air. The fire stick's green light and black light alternated, charged at the charming lady. The lady's watery eyes only looked at him. She waved her long sleeve and blocked the fire stick. Both of them charged forward. In a blink of an eye, not knowing whether it was intentional or not, they were very close to each other. Shah Danon was surprised. He saw the extremely charming face of the lady was very close to him. A faint fragrance came from her, and the soul-touching eyes in the night, as beautiful as agate and jade, reflecting his own figure. His heart was shaken. What did you see in the well? Even at this critical juncture of the battle, the woman's voice still seemed to be gentle and somewhat charming, softly drilling into his ears. Shah Danon's mind was shaken. His mind was almost taken away. At the critical moment, a golden light flashed across his face, then he calmed down. Three-Tails Fox Spirit frowned. Shah Danon shouted, flew several yards away in the air, landed on the ground, and stood side by side with Stone. Stone looked at him, said worriedly, "This devil's seduction is very powerful. Be careful." Shah Danon's heart was still fluttering. He nodded. They looked at the sky. Three-Tails Fox Spirit was still standing in midair. Her dress was fluttering in the wind. She was like a person from a painting, extremely beautiful. Tannis frowned, surprised. That young man's determination is very strong. Under the seduction of Three-Tails Fox Spirit's 500 years of cultivation, he can still calm his mind. Tani curled her lips, said, "That's nothing. Didn't you see that big guy is also fine?" Tannis said, "What do you know? That big guy's cultivation is related to Buddhism. And Buddhism is very particular about quietus mind. It has natural resistance to this seduction art. But Jadian is Taoism. It is much weaker in this aspect. With this young man's cultivation, he can have such determination, really rare. Really?" Tani tilted her head and thought for a moment, then looked at the field. Three-Tails Fox Spirit slowly descended from the sky. Although there was still a smile on her face, her eyes were getting serious. In that short period of time, she had already sensed that although the two of them looked young, their cultivation was not low. That big guy's Tao technique was not low. That big guy's Taoism seemed to be from Buddhism. The other youth, on the other hand, had a surprisingly firm will. It seemed that the seduction technique that he was most familiar with would not be of much use here. Bailu was about to make a move, but seeing Shah Danon had returned to normal, she stopped and watched coldly. The cold moonlight shined through the leaves, shined on the lonely figure of the gentle woman. A bit sad, she lowered her head slightly. Her long and thin eyelashes seemed to cover her weak thoughts. She seemed to be listening to the faint sounds in the forest at night. She said softly, "I have no enmity with you. Why do you want to kill me?" Shirtu took a step forward. His entire person looked like a fierce tiger, shouted, "You evildoer, bringing disaster to the world, stirring up panic in Shaoqi town. Don't you deserve death?" She raised her eyes and looked over. A gust of wind blew gently, ruffling the hem of her clothes. "You want to kill me is because I am a devil?" She looked at Shah Danan deeply. "What about you? What is your reason?" Shah Danan said without thinking, "You have done many evil deeds. I am a righteous person, eradicating evil for the people. It is my duty." Three Tails Fox Spirit was silent for a moment, then smiled faintly, suddenly said, "Young man, how old are you this year?" Shah Danan, startled, frowned. "Why do you ask this?" She gently raised her hand, carefully tidied up a strand of messy hair. Her jade-like fingers stroked through the black hair. "These words must have been told to you by your righteous and awe-inspiring master, right? Demons like us have always been a scourge to the human world. We must be eradicated, right?" Shah Danan frowned. The teachings of his master were indeed like that. Three Tails Fox Spirit continued, "But if I say these words are wrong, what will you think?" Shah Danan snorted disdainfully. He was about to refute, but at that moment, the conversation he had with Wan Run Wang flashed across his mind. He was stunned like he was struck by lightning. Could it be that everything I know is correct? What is the true way of heaven? What is the true righteousness? Careful! Suddenly, Onara shouted. The wind blew. The voice of the devil was loud. Three Tails Fox Spirit suddenly rose up while Shah Danan was startled. Her white jade-like hand turned into 5 sharp claws, whistled through the air. Stonehead roared and was about to use his technique. But at this moment, the surroundings were filled with demonic cries. In the darkness, countless demonic eyes flickered and the wind was piercing. It was unknown how many demons were attacking, but he couldn't split himself in time. Three Tails Fox Spirit determined Shah Danan was the weaker one among them. Once she decided, she ordered the devils to hold Onara. Then she will finish off one of them first. Like lightning, the sharp claws were about to reach the young man. Even from far away, there was a faint exclamation. Shah Danan suddenly raised his head. Three Tails Fox Spirit and his eyes met. Her heart was moved, but before she could think, a black, glowing green stick suddenly appeared between Shah Danan and herself. The next moment, her sharp claws and the stick collided. No one could describe that feeling. From an outsider's point of view, there wasn't even the earth-shattering sound and movement that they had expected. In that seemingly frozen moment, they only saw the woman's clothes fluttering in the air, her 5 fingers forming into claws, grabbing the black fire stick. Her snow-white skin suddenly seemed to have lost all color, coldly whitened, almost became transparent. In front of her, there was like a bottomless devil whirlpool spinning in the night, grinning hideously, about to swallow her. Chapter 94. She raised her head, screamed, her voice shrill. Then she rose into the sky, turned into a white figure, finally broke through the demon-like green light, landed far away. Then she suddenly turned back, her face shocked, her face stern, staring at the young man, and the fire stick that was slowly turning in midair. In the distance, Xiao Huan sucked in a breath of cold air and said softly, "What a powerful magic treasure! What is this?" "Grandpa?" She asked twice, but realized that Zhou Yixian did not reply at all. She turned to look at him, only to see him frowning, his face also filled with shock. Tani was surprised. She pulled Taniska, said, "Grandpa, what happened to you?" Zhou Yixian trembled, as if he just woke up from the scene just now. But his expression was still bewildered, muttering, "Who is this young man? How could Jadian have such a strange disciple?" Tani looked at him, said, "What?" Taniska looked at the field, said, "The esper in that young man's hand is very strange. When he summoned it, the evil energy was stronger than Three Tails Fox Spirit's evil energy. This evil thing, how can—" Tani opened her mouth, looked at the field. Suddenly, she saw something from the corner of her eyes. She whispered to Tanizka, "Grandpa, look at that woman." Tanizka, startled, followed the direction of Tani's finger. He saw Bailu in water-green dress quietly standing at the side. Onara was fighting with the monsters, but she did not look at them. Her eyes were only looking at Shah Danan. Especially when she saw Shah Danan summon the fire stick. Her face was even more strange, like happy, but also worried, like hesitating. Her face was uncertain. Tanizka looked at her, said, "That woman is interested in the fire stick. What are you looking at?" Tani asked curiously, "What fire stick?" Tanizka said, "It is that young man." Tani was not convinced, said, "Strange, why she is interested in that young man, but I can't look at it." Tanizka glared at her, was about to teach this disobedient and precocious granddaughter a lesson. Suddenly he heard movement in the field, quickly turned his head and looked, no longer caring about Xiaohuan. In the field, Shah Danan saw the fox spirit retreated. It was a good opportunity. Naturally, he could not miss it. In a blink of an eye, he had already closed in. The fire stick whistled. Three-Tails fox spirit frowned. Her face became paler. Seeing Shah Danan was coming, the night was getting darker, the wind was getting stronger. On the woman's face, the two light eyebrows were also locked. With a light shout, her sleeves fluttered in the wind. Her jade-like fingers extended and bent, forming a blade as she slashed through the air. Ah! The sharp howl was like a mountain. It came suddenly and pierced everyone's eardrums like a needle. In the dark forest, countless of ghostly light suddenly shot out. From the darkness behind the woman, countless of monsters came out like tide. They screamed and charged at Shah Danan with hateful face. In a blink of an eye, Shah Danan was almost drowned by the monsters. Everyone was pale, but after a moment, Shah Danan broke through the crowd of monsters with the stick. The green light of the fire stick passed by, except for some of the larger and somewhat cultivated monsters. The other monsters did not dare to come forward. Everyone was even more shocked. But when Shah Danan cast his spell, his heart was bitter. Absorbed soul was created by burning the monsters' nether souls. Seeing the monsters' instinctive fear toward the fire stick, most likely what Wanren Wang said was true. Three-Tails Fox Spirit saw the countless of monsters could not stop Shah Danan. Her face became even paler. At this moment, Onara roared. Golden light flashed, solemn and solemn. From afar, it was like he turned into the demon slayer Vidra. He opened his eyes, rose up, and stabbed the Shatterer's staff into the ground again. Amidst the rumbling sound, golden light shot out in all directions. This time, the surrounding area caved in even more, reaching nearly 10 meters. The devil-slaying golden light that flashed out was even more dazzling, like lightning flashing and thunder roaring. In the whale, half of the monsters surrounding Onara were turned into nothingness. The rest of them were surprised and ran away. The stone fell to the ground, and as soon as its huge body stood up, it panted heavily. It was obvious that such a powerful magical technique consumed a lot of its magic power. But his body was strong. Soon he recovered his breath. Although he was still panting, he looked around, then charged at Shah Danan. Three-Tails Fox Spirit saw Onara charging at her. Shah Danan was also not far away. She stamped her foot and was about to retreat into the darkness behind her. But at this moment, white light flashed in the darkness. White flowers flew out. The wind was sharp. Three-Tails Fox Spirit was surprised. She did not dare to move and stood still. Taking a closer look, it turned out to be the young girl in green who had been standing next to him. She didn't know when, but she had already cut off her path of retreat. The snowflakes that filled the sky gradually converged and circled around her. Under the cold moonlight, they gradually condensed into a cute little flower that was held between her beautiful fingers. Behind her, the sound of footsteps came. She turned around and saw Shah Danan and Onara had already arrived. They surrounded her in the center. The little demons were nowhere to be found. She was the only one left. She seemed to be a little lonely as she stood silently in the midst of the humans. She opened her mouth slightly, with some regret, but no words came out. Even at this moment, her gentle and charming face still had an unparalleled gentleness and beauty. not losing the slightest bit. She looked at Bailu, then at Onara. But last her eyes, the gentle eyes, still fell on Shah Danan's face. Shah Danan was alert. She didn't move at all. Instead, she gently asked, "Young lad, what did you see in the well just now? Can you tell me?" Everyone was startled. They could not understand why this devil was so interested in what Shah Danan saw in the well. Before Shah Danan could speak, Onara already loudly said, "Brother Zhang, do not fall in her trap." Shah Danan nodded, silent. He raised his right hand and was about to rush forward. Three-Tails Fox Spirit looked at him, suddenly sighed. Shah Danan's mind was suddenly confused. The moonlight was like water, gently shined down. The woman lowered her head. The thin eyelashes covered her soft eyes. The watery eyes were rippling. Then, she raised her head, reached into her bosom, and slowly took out something. Everyone stared at it. It was a round object that was half the size of a palm. There was a dark green jade bracelet on the outside, and it was obviously not an ordinary object. In the middle of the jade bracelet, there was a small crimson piece that looked like a mirror, but wasn't. There was even an ancient flame totem carved in the middle. The jade ring took up most of the item. On both sides of the jade ring, there was a red thread tied to the ring. Tanizka was dumbfounded, truly dumbfounded. Tawny could feel that her grandpa had never been like this, motionless like a piece of wood. She was a little scared, quietly pulled Tanizka's sleeve, asked, "Grandpa, what happened to you? How is it possible? How is it possible?" Tanizka stared blankly at the scene, stared at the strange esper in Three-Tails Fox Spirit's hand. His voice was like moaning, said, "This is clearly Incense Valley's most precious treasure, Inferno Mirror. This esper is the most young item in the world, and also the most powerful weapon of Incense Valley to slay evil for thousands of years. How? How could it be in the hands of this fox spirit?" Tawny, startled, took a few more glances at the Inferno Mirror, said, "Is that esper that powerful?" Tanizka let out a long breath, murmured, "The world has really changed. The righteous disciples are holding evil items with menacing aura. The evildoers are holding the most powerful artifact. TCH, I was wondering why you were so emotional." Tawny snorted. Tanizka said angrily, "What did you say?" Tawny said, "Such old-fashioned words. You are not even blushing. What year is it now? Still caring about the difference between righteous and evil." Tanizka was tongue-tied, could not speak for a moment. Chapter 95. In the field, everyone frowned. Seeing the seductive woman took out such a strange esper under the heavy encirclement, most of them thought she was going to fight like a cornered beast. They all focused and prepared. Only Onara shouted. The Shatterer staff danced in the air and charged forward. Before Shah Danan could shout "Careful!" Three-Tails Fox Spirit's soft eyes glanced at Onara's large body. Both of her hands held a red tassel next to the jade bracelet, slowly lifted it up and placed it in front of her. The jade bracelet was gently turning, seemed to be reflecting her face. The moonlight was light and cold, shone on the Inferno Mirror for some reason. That engraved ancient fire totem, right now, seemed to have come to life, vivid and lifelike, as if it was really burning. Onara rose into the air. The Shatterer's staff pierced through the air. He shouted, "Evildoer, accept your death." And at that moment, in the center of the Inferno Mirror, where that fire totem was suddenly from the original dark red, in an instant turned into a bright, almost transparent crimson red, like in a blink, that fire totem was already scorching hot by the 9 heaven divine fire. As for the flame totem, it had already turned into a blazing inferno. With the seductive woman as the center, an invisible ball of scorching air rapidly rushed out in all directions with a hoo sound. Apart from the few feet under her feet, all of the plants within 30 feet of her were burnt yellow in an instant. However, for some reason, there was not a single spark, and it did not catch on fire. Shah Danan and Bailu paled at each other. They never expected the Three-Tails Fox Spirit would have such powerful esper. Onara, who was charging at Three-Tails Fox Spirit in midair, also saw this scene. Although he was surprised by the power of the esper, he did not show any fear. His right hand grabbed the glowing golden wolf fong stick in his hand. The stick became longer in the air, made a sharp howl, spun a circle, and hit at Three Tails Fox Spirit's head. The stick was still in midair, but the ground was already filled with sand and stones. Three Tails Fox Spirit's weak body felt like it was going to be blown away by the strong wind. But she smiled coldly, her fingers hooked on the red tassel, her body slightly tilted, aimed at Onara. That burning inferno mirror, reflected in her charming eyes, was like two piles of angry flames. Boom! In a loud sound, from the fire totem in the center of the inferno mirror, a fire dragon suddenly shot out, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws, its momentum shocking the heavens, its entire body burning with raging flames, illuminating half of the forest as if it was daytime. Stonehead was shocked. The fire dragon quickly became bigger. When it first came out from the inferno mirror, it was still a flame, but when it arrived in front of him, just the dragon head was already the size of two people, especially the hot air rushing towards him almost made him suspect that he was in a furnace. From Shah Danan's view, under the impact of the fire dragon, Onara's hair had already turned yellow. It was not hard to imagine what situation Onara was facing. But Onara was not afraid. Although surprised, he did not panic. The Shatterer's staff, under the control of his spiritual power, shined brighter and struck at the dragon head. The fire dragon let out a roar in midair. Its pair of huge dragon eyes spouted out two angry flames. With a loud bang, it opened its blazing mouth and bit down on the huge wolf tooth mace that was swinging down. The golden and crimson-colored light spread out quickly from the point of contact. At the same time, thunder roared. Onara felt the Shatterer's staff in his hand was so hot that he could not hold it anymore. In surprise, he gathered his divine power and forcefully pulled out the Shatterer's staff from the dragon's mouth. The fire dragon danced in the sky, roaring incessantly. Suddenly, it opened its mouth and spat out a thick pillar of fire towards the rock. Onara roared. Both of his hands held the incantation mark. The Shatterer's staff stood in front of him. The golden light flashed and created a light wall, blocking the pillar of fire. But his body was pushed back by the strong force. Shah Danan saw Onara was at a disadvantage and was in danger. He quickly made his move. The fire stick rose silently and shot at the fire dragon from the side. But the fire dragon seemed to have intelligence. It knew it without looking. It turned its head, stared, opened its mouth, and another thick pillar of fire came at him. Shah Danan was caught off guard. The fire was like a mountain coming at him. There was no way to avoid it. He gritted his teeth and urged his spiritual power. The fire stick glowed with green light and blocked the pillar of fire. And at this moment, the three-tailed fox spirit gave a long laugh, leapt into the air. The inferno mirror in her hands glowed brightly, charging straight towards the two of them. Shah Danan and Onara were in a stalemate with the fire dragon. They were surprised. Even Bailu, who was standing behind Three Tails Fox Spirit, was surprised. In a hurry, Bailu shouted and rose into the air. Her right hand's jade-like fingers stretched out. Heartsick flower turned into countless petals, flying in the sky and striking at the back of Three Tails Fox Spirit. At a place where no one could see, Bailu's left hand was quietly placed on her waist. She caught the small golden bell in her hand. Three Tails Fox Spirit seemed to know the power of Heartsick Flower. It did not dare to take it head-on and dodged. Bailu did not chase. She went to Shah Danan and stood next to him in the air. Shah Danan lifted his head and looked at her. Bailu's eyes turned and also looked at him. For some reason, Shah Danan immediately turned his head. The fire dragon was still swaggering in the air, but Three Tails Fox Spirit, after Bayao dashed over, without any hesitation, waved her hand. The inferno mirror flew back to her hand. She turned into a white light, disappeared into the darkness of the forest. Shah Danan and others were startled. At far, Tanis-Ka let out a long sigh, said, "Good, good. It seems like Three Tails Fox Spirit's cultivation is not enough. Unable to use the power of Inferno Mirror. Can only scare those young people. Or else with the power of Inferno Mirror, those people will be in danger. Tani said unhappily. How do you know her cultivation is not enough? I see she is still not at a disadvantage, even 1 against 3. Taniskah glared at her, said, What do you know? Inferno Mirror is an ancient divine item. Its power is unparalleled. It is said when it is at its strongest, it can summon fire dragon and burn everything in the world. Wouldn't I burn these young people who don't know the immensity of heaven and earth into ashes? Tani snorted and ignored him. She turned and looked at the field. Suddenly she frowned, said, Grandpa, look, they seem to be chasing again. Taniskah was surprised and quickly looked. Shah Danon and others seemed to have discussed for a while, then turned and went into the darkness, where Three-Tails' fox spirit disappeared. Onara went first. Shah Danon took 2 steps, then noticed Bailu did not move. He turned around and faced Bailu. He wanted to say something, but for some reason he stopped. His face was a little red. Bailu smiled. Her mouth seemed to grumble, then went first. Shah Danon, startled, shook his head and followed. Taniskah was startled, stomped his foot, said, Those young people are really reckless. That Three-Tails fox spirit has Inferno Mirror. How can she still chase? Xiao Huan took a bite of sugar-coated haws. From the beginning, she had never thrown this away, said without batting an eyelid. Didn't you say it before? Three-tailed fox spirit skills are not enough, unable to unleash the true power of the Inferno Mirror. If that is so, having Inferno Mirror is not the same as not having it. Then what is there for those young people to be afraid of? Taniskah was speechless, as if he was choked, unable to speak for a long time. After a while, he suddenly thought of something, hurriedly said, Quick, let's go too. Xiao Huan was startled by him, said, Leave? Where? Taniskah strode forward, said, To kill the demon, of course. Xiao Huan sneered and followed up, said, In the past, you have met so many big and small demons. Neither big nor small. How come I only saw you running? Never saw you rushing up to eliminate them? Taniskah blushed, said, We are walking in Jianghu. The most important thing is to have self-awareness. Halfway through his words, he suddenly stopped. His eyes were attracted by another thing. Behind him, following his gaze, Tani Huan saw that Taniskah was looking at something that had been quietly standing there since the beginning, without any movement, the ancient well. At this moment, Shah Danon and others had already disappeared into the darkness. The countless of monsters were now completely gone. Only Taniskah and Tani were left in the forest. The cold moonlight shined on the ancient well, reflected the moss and ancient marks, revealing the vicissitudes and desolation. Taniskah took a deep breath, walked toward it. Tani followed behind him. She was a little nervous, said, Grandpa, what are you going to do? Taniskah frowned, said, I would like to see what is so strange in the well. Why Three-Tails Fox Spirit kept asking that young man what he saw. Xiao Huan stopped 3 steps away from the well. Her hair stood on end. She felt that the surroundings were quiet and dark, but there seemed to be a wind blowing in the darkness, not knowing how many eyes were watching her from the darkness. Taniskah walked to the side of the well, raised his head, and looked around. Seeing nothing strange, he was about to look down. Tani suddenly became nervous, shouted, Grandpa, be careful. Chapter 96. Taniskah glanced at her, smiled, and said, Nothing. Then he looked down, into the well. Xiao Huan stared intently at his face, suddenly saw on Taniskah's originally nervous and solemn face. A trace of surprise appeared, then in a blink it turned into joy, and then into puzzlement, raised his head in deep thought. Tani walked to him, whispered, Grandpa, what did you see? Taniskah frowned. I saw gold as much as a mountain. Taniskah murmured to himself. The reflection in the well is not the shadow of a person, strange. Suddenly, Xiao Huan beside him called out. Taniskah was surprised, quickly looked at her. Xiao Huan, without knowing since when, was also lying by the well looking down. Right now, she was raising her head. Taniskah, startled, said, What did you see? Tani shrugged, said, Candied haws as much as a mountain. Taniskah fell on the ground. After a while, when the two of them walked into the depths of the forest, Taniskah whispered to Xiao Huan, I have thought about it. This ancient well is most likely the well of full moon in the ancient legend. It is during the full moon. If people look down, they will see their most beloved person or thing. But I still don't understand why Three-Tails Fox Spirit kept asking that young man what he saw in the well. But now I really want to know what exactly that young man saw. The forest did not look big from the outside, but when Shaw Danon and others were in it, in the darkness, there was an illusion of boundless. The three of them rode on their esper, passed through the darkness, closely following a white light. That was the trail of Three-Tails Fox Spirit. Unexpectedly, the white light only flashed a few times in front of everyone's eyes before suddenly disappearing into thin air. Shaw Danon and others rode on their esper and came to the place where the white light disappeared. It was filled with ancient trees. There was a small hill in the middle of the forest. At the side of the hill, there was a cave. The rocks around the cave were all black. Needless to say, this was the Black Rock Cave. The three of them stopped in front of the cave entrance and looked at each other. They looked into the black stone cave and felt that although the cave entrance wasn't big, it was pitch black inside. It gave them a feeling that they couldn't see the bottom. Gusts of cold wind blew out, brushing past his body, giving him goosebumps. Bailu frowned, said, "The danger in this cave is unpredictable, and the power of that fox spirit's magic weapon is very strong. Let's not risk going in." Shaw Danon glanced at her, but before he spoke, Onara already loudly said, "Brother Zhang, we have completed the task of eliminating the demon. It is easy for us to give up today, but when the demon reappears, the disaster will be even worse." Shaw Danon immediately nodded and said, "Brother sure is right. Let's go in." Bailu's face changed. She was about to get angry, but Shaw Danon turned his head, with a sincere face, lowered his voice, said, "It is really dangerous inside. Shurdage and I are from the righteous. We will not shirk our duty." "You," he paused, turned his head, but his voice still came, "Your own safety is the most important. Don't put yourself in danger." Bailu could not see Shaw Danon's face, but she could hear the sincere care in his voice. Her heart was sweet, but her mouth said coldly, "I want to go in. It is none of your business." Shaw Danon, startled, couldn't say anything. Onara saw their strange expression, shook his head, said, "Brother Zhang, let us go in." Shaw Danon answered, then couldn't help but look at Bailu again. Bailu snorted, then moved ahead of them and entered into the pitch-dark Black Rock Cave. Shaw Danon was surprised, quickly followed. He could hear the sound of wind. Onara was also behind him. In the darkness, the heartsick flower in Bailu's hand slowly brightened. The soft white light brightened the area around 5 feet around them. Shaw Danon looked around. The rock walls were filled with strange stones as black as ink. They looked as hard as iron, very cold. This Black Rock Cave was similar to the 10,000 Fangs ancient cave in Kongseng Mountain. Once one entered the cave, the path went straight underground, and the slope was even steeper than the 10,000 Fangs ancient cave. It was unknown whether it was dug by the villagers or natural. The three of them walked for a while. They were already deep into the ground, but there was no sound, no sign of living things. Not like in Cave of Fangs, there were countless of terrifying vampire bats. As Shaw Danon walked, his mind couldn't help but return to the scene when he first entered the Cave of Fangs. He naturally remembered the time when he and Bailu were trapped in the Blood Drop Cave under Forsaken Abyss. At this moment, Bailu, who was in front of them, suddenly stopped, uttered a soft cry. Shaw Danon thought there was some danger. He hurriedly rushed forward and stood next to her. Bailu, startled, turned and looked at him. There was no way out. A cliff was in front of them. The bottom of the cliff was pitch black. But looking at it from afar, in the depth of the darkness, there seemed to be a few will-o-wisps flashing. Shaw Danon's body shook. He thought he returned to Forsaken Abyss again. But obviously this place was much worse compared to Forsaken Abyss. Just the space was more than 100 times smaller. Shaw Danon frowned, turned his head, and looked at Onara. Onara also walked to the edge of the cliff. He looked at it, pondered for a moment, then said, "Brother Zhang, seems like we have to go down." Shaw Danon nodded, said, "Brother sure, you need to be careful. Onara's face was serious, said, "You too." Then he pointed with his finger. The golden shatterer rose in front of him. He jumped on it, took a deep breath, then slowly descended. Shah Danon turned his head and looked at Bailu. But this time, he did not say anything, probably because of Bailu. Then he rode on a fire stick and followed them down. Bailu was behind him, suddenly smiled. Her smile was filled with joy. Gold, green, and white light slowly descended from the cliff. The surrounding was still the same black rocks. There was nothing else. There was no sound around them. But there was something strange. The more they descended, the higher the temperature was. After descending for some distance, Shah Danon used the light from their esper to see the surroundings clearly. There was no way to go in front of the cliff. It was a cliff with strange rocks. The place where the three of them were at was like an ancient well magnified thousands of times, falling straight down. Suddenly, Onara, who was at the bottom, hurriedly said, "Careful." Shah Danon and Bailu were surprised, quickly took precautions. On the stone wall not far from them, there was a small cave. Inside the cave, there were two small, bright, and deep eyes looking at them. Onara made a gesture to them, then slowly approached. Shah Danon and Bailu held their breath, carefully watching there. It had been a long time since light shone into this dark place. When the golden light from Stone's magic staff illuminated the small hole, they saw what was inside. It was a mouse the size of a palm. It was using the small hole as its nest. At this moment, its eyes were wide open, staring at the three uninvited guests. Onara shook his head and stepped back. He looked at Shah Danon and Bailu. The three of them smiled bitterly, then descended again. However, what happened next was completely out of their expectations. 1 dot, 2 dots, 3 dots. In the darkness, bright and dim lights slowly lit up in their front, back, left, right, up, and down. In the darkness, there seemed to be countless of deep breathing, and also like low roaring in the darkness. Even though the area above Black Rock Cave seemed to be a barren land without the slightest bit of life, below this cliff, deep underground where the sun could not be seen, there were inconceivably and unexpectedly countless creatures multiplying here. The darkness seemed to have lifted the ancient veil in front of them, following an inexplicable heartbeat, starting from the rat hole and going further down. There were more caves of various sizes on the stone walls. In the end, there was a cave every few feet. And in that cave, there were all kinds of strange creatures, such as mice and bats, and, as big as a man, a black ape and a leopard. How did they hunt for food on a daily basis? These were the animals that they had some impression of in the past, but after descending a short distance, they were even more stunned to see that there were actually crabs that originally lived in the water on the stone wall, and this crab had 4 pincers. Then there was a cute but nameless 6-legged civet cat, and a 2-horned monster with the word king on its forehead that looked like a pig. There were so many of them that it was impossible to count. Countless of eyes gathered into a sea of light, staring at the 3 people in the light. Shah Danon was more surprised. He couldn't help but think, if his old friend Issa from Mount Jade was here, with his character of collecting strange creatures, his mouth will probably be crooked from smiling. Chapter 97. Countless of eyes in the darkness were staring at the people in the 3 balls of light. Shah Danon did not know why, but his heart was still a little bit scared. He looked at Bailu and Onara and found their faces were not so good. They had never experienced such situation before. Even so, the countless creatures around them did not make any moves to attack the 2 of them. Apart from a few tigers and leopards that seemed to be irascible, there was basically no movement. They only watched silently. They continued to slowly descend. After another 4 or 5 yards, Shah Danon suddenly found the number of glowing eyes of the creatures were decreasing. But it felt like the size of each glowing eye was much bigger than the ones he saw earlier. He frowned and silently moved closer to the side of the stone wall. Sure enough, with the light from the fire stick, he found that the number of holes on the black stone wall had decreased, but the size of each hole was at least twice the size of the ones above. Almost every hole was as tall as a person. Correspondingly, the creatures in the cave were much more ferocious. Almost all of them were large in size, sharp teeth, ferocious face. It chilled people's heart. There was even a ferocious beast that saw Shah Danon was approaching. It was like a wild boar with a giant bear head. It roared and swung its giant claw, almost hit Shah Danon. Shah Danon was surprised. He quickly rode his esper and retreated several feet. At this moment, Bailu and Anara heard the sound and looked at him. Shah Danon said softly, "It seems like there are ferocious beasts here. We need to be careful." Bailu and Onara nodded. Each of them were on guard. But other than being attacked by the beasts when they got close to the wall, the three of them did not encounter any other harassment. Although the beasts were ferocious, they did not have the ability to fly, so they could only stay in the cave. While Shah Danon carefully controlled his flight, he thought, "These beasts do not know how to fly. How do they hunt for food on the precipice?" Just like that, the three of them descended another several yards. At this time, from the cliff of the Black Rock Cave, they were at least 100 jong deep underground. But looking down, this deep and huge black hole, other than the light from the eyes of the surrounding strange creatures, was still deep and bottomless. What was even more different from what he knew was there was no coldness in the abyss. On the contrary, the temperature here was much higher than the surface of the Dark Dray Cave. Shah Danon felt he was about to sweat, but the surrounding was still dark. There was no sign of heat from the fire. It was very strange. Onara was riding on a Shatterer's staff. As they slowly descended, he suddenly cursed, "Damn, this damn fox. It found such a strange place to make its nest." Shah Danon was fine, but he heard Bailu giggled from not far away. The laughter was clear and sweet. Although she lowered her voice, but in this quiet space, it seemed to travel far. Shah Danon looked at her. In the white and soft halo of heartsick flower, Bailu's smile was like flower. Her eyes were filled with gentleness. At this moment, she also felt something and turned to Shah Danon. Their eyes met. Shah Danon's heart jumped. He quickly turned his head away. As they went further down, the situation seemed to have changed again. The cave in the stone wall was still slowly getting bigger, and the creatures inside were also bigger than the ones above. They looked bigger than ordinary people. But here, the three of them unexpectedly discovered that nearly half of the cave was empty. The air, which had always been relatively fresh, now seemed to carry a faint smell of blood. The three of them looked at each other, alertness in their eyes. But even so, it did not slow down their descending speed. In the endless darkness under their feet, there seemed to be something like starlight, like flame, quietly brightened. Above the abyss, Tanis Ka and his granddaughter Tani finally arrived at the cliff where Shah Danon and others jumped off under the light of the torch. Looking at the cliff with no way to go and the bottomless abyss under their feet, Tanis Ka was tongue-tied, unable to say a word. Tani was after all still young. Although she had traveled the world with her grandpa, but in this dark and silent Dark Drake cave, her heart could not help but be afraid. She peeped at the bottom of the cliff, then immediately shrunk her head back, whispered to Tanis Ka, "Grandpa, do you have any way to go down?" Tanis Ka rolled his eyes, said dejectedly, "We don't know any magic and did not prepare any rope. This is bad." Xiao Huan, on the other hand, heaved a sigh of relief, patted her chest with her hand, and said, "Fortunately, fortunately." Tanis Ka glared at her, said, "What good? Maybe there are mountains of gold and silver, agate, and emerald waiting for us down there. This time, this is a big loss for us." His words were full of regret. Tani snorted, took a bite of the candied haw in her right hand, said, "Mountains of gold and silver. I think there may be mountains of corpses and bones waiting for you. Well, since we can't go down, let's go. Or else if we encounter one or two little demons, you, the famous 13th generation disciple of Master Jadian, will lose the face of Master Jadian." Tanis Ka was angry. "Nonsense, what kind of person am I, Tanis Ka? How can I lose the face of Master Jadian?" Before he finished speaking, suddenly in this quiet cave, from the darkness, there were two schwa-schwa sounds. Two flashes of light, as fast as lightning, actually landed in front of the two of them in the blink of an eye. Tanis Ka shouted, pulled Tani, put his right hand into his bosom, grabbed the yellow talisman, and was about to cast a spell to escape. Unexpectedly, that light flashed twice. Two figures appeared. Their movements were as fast as ghosts. Without waiting for Zhou Yixian to take out a talisman to cast a spell, a crisp sound was heard. Zhou Yixian felt a coldness on his neck. An object was already pressed against his neck. Immediately all the hairs on his body stood up, his heart groaning uncontrollably. After calming down, Tanizka realized that the other party did not take his life, but the object on his neck was not removed. He gathered his courage and looked at the two people. It was a young man and a young woman. The man's face was like jade, extremely handsome. The woman's face was like a lotus, incomparably beautiful. Right now, the two of them were still one zhang away from Zhou Yixian and Xiao Huan. But where the man waved his hand, there was a jade ruler-shaped, pure and warm esper pressed against Zhou Yixian's neck, and the beautiful woman at the same time controlled a green celestial sword, restrained Xiao Huan. Poor Tani was pale with fright. Her right hand was still holding the candied haws. Her mouth was already crying loudly, said, "Monster brother, monster sister, don't eat me. I am small and little meat, not tasty. If you want to eat, eat my grandpa." Tanizka almost fell to the ground, angrily said, "Stupid girl, I really raised you for nothing. Usually you can't tell, at the moment of life and death, you will betray your grandpa." Tani sobbed, "Grandpa, don't blame me. After you die, at least I will give you a stick of candied haws every few days." Tanizka angrily said, "Nonsense. I hate these sweet and greasy things the most. If you want to give me some beggar's chicken, steamed fish, or something like that." Tani nodded. "Grandpa, I will remember. Don't worry and go." Tanizka heaved a sigh of relief, said, "That's more like it. Then I can go with peace of mind." Wait. He suddenly woke up, his eyebrows raised. "Stupid girl. What should I worry about? Where should I go?" Heartless. Listening to Tanizka's incessant blabbering about Tani, and it looked like he would not finish until tomorrow, the celestial-like man and woman frowned, looked at each other, and took back their esper at the same time. The woman said, "Shi Xiang, I don't see any demon aura on them. They don't look like demons." The man said, "Correct." Then he turned to Tanizka, shouted loudly, or else he would not have interrupted Tanizka's long speech. "Who are you people?" Tanizka, startled for a moment, immediately changed to a calm expression, said, "Hee, my granddaughter, and I know there's a demon running amok here. Specially came to subdue the demon, to help the people get rid of the evil." Tani was speechless, turned to look at her grandpa, but saw Tanizka was calm. His expression was normal. Unexpectedly, the man sized up the two of them and sneered. "I see that your Tao skills are shallow. I'm afraid you're not even a match for an ordinary little demon. Yet you still dare to come to this dangerous place. You'd better go back as soon as possible." Tanizka blushed, said, Yes. Then he pulled Tani, turned and walked out. After the old and the young disappeared in the darkness, the man turned to look at the cliff in front, said, "Shimmy, seems we have to go down." The beautiful woman said, "Yes. This time it is really God's help. Let us know from that small town that the demon fox is hiding in this black rock cave. If we can really eliminate the demon and get back the Inferno mirror, Valley Master will be very happy." The man smiled and said, "Time is of the essence. Let's go." Then, light shone, the man and the woman, like lightning flashed, plunged into the bottomless abyss below the cliff. But on the cliff, in the darkness, a flame flashed. Tanizka and Tani slowly walked out. The two of them did not go far. Tanizka frowned, pondered for a moment, said to Tani, "These two young people have excellent aptitude. Their skills are high. Just now, I saw a flame pattern on the edge of their sleeves. I'm afraid they are disciples of Funxiang Valley." Tani was surprised, said, "Funxiang Valley?" Tanizka nodded. "Funxiang Valley is very powerful in the Xiuzhen world, together with Qing Yun sect, Tianyin Temple, one of the three big good faction sects. There are many experts in the sect. Recently, I heard there are two more outstanding disciples, a man and a woman. The man is called Li Sun, the woman is called Yan Hong from their esper. Just now, they are most likely these two." Chapter 98. Tani looked at the bottom of the cliff, said worriedly, "Then the three people who just went down." Tanizka shrugged his shoulders, pulled Tani and walked out. He said, "Then we don't care. Since tonight is so lively, we won't be able to take any advantage. Sigh. What a pity. Tani laughed lightly, did not say anything, followed Grandpa outside. Only the bottom of the cliff was still dark. Li Su and Yannin's figure had already disappeared. Sha Danan was in the darkness. Except the temperature was getting hotter and hotter, and the eyes of the monsters were staring at him. He felt like he had returned to Forsaken Abyss again. The surrounding caves were getting larger and larger. At this moment, most of the caves were already as tall as 1.5 or even 2 people. The monsters inside were also getting more and more ferocious, and their bodies were also getting larger and larger. However, the number of empty caves was also increasing. The stench of blood in the air seemed to be getting stronger and stronger. Even during the process of descending, he could hear the sound of chewing coming from unknown place. It was like some unknown giant beast was tearing and swallowing its food. It was very creepy. At the moment when everyone's muscles tightened, they could almost hear their own heartbeat. Suddenly, from the darkness below, Sha Danan felt a strong wind blew past his feet. Almost out of instinct, his heart moved. The fire stick quickly moved 3 feet to the side at the moment the wind touched his body. Pah! A loud sound. Under the dim light, it was like there was a huge tentacle-like thing in the darkness. Like a whip, it swung past Sha Danan and hit heavily on the dark stone wall. A moment later, mournful cries suddenly rang out from the stone walls of the abyss. The cries rang out incessantly. Sha Danan and others were surprised. They turned around and saw the demon-like giant tentacle rushed into a large cave on the stone wall. After twitching for a few times, it retracted. Sha Danan gasped. A large 5-eyed, saber-toothed tiger was caught by the giant tentacle and dragged out from the cave. Even though the 5-eyed, saber-toothed tiger bared its teeth and roared, but compared to the unbelievably large tentacle, its body was as small as a baby, powerless. Once the tentacle caught the tiger, it immediately retracted back into the darkness below. In a blink of an eye, it disappeared into the darkness, leaving only the desperate roar of the tiger. The 3 of them paused, paled at each other. Especially Bailu. Her face was even paler. The darkness beneath his feet was so deep that the bottom couldn't be seen. Who knew how many terrifying things were hidden within? After a moment, Onara coughed and was about to speak, but Bailu's eyes were sharp. She suddenly screamed, "Below! Careful!" Sha Danan and Onara were surprised again. They quickly looked down. In the darkness below them, a fire suddenly flashed. Instantly, the temperature of the surrounding suddenly rose. The fire quickly became bigger, followed by the roar of the fierce wind. When it got closer, the 3 of them could see it clearly. Their face changed. A fire dragon, roaring from the underground abyss, charged up. Looking at the fire dragon's appearance, it was similar to the fire dragon summoned by the 3-tailed demon fox using the Inferno mirror, but for some reason, the current fire dragon's size and power far surpassed the fire dragon on the surface. Although the 3 of them had this question in their mind, this was not the time to think about it. The fierce fire dragon, the heat wave filled the sky, was in front of them in a blink of an eye. It was unstoppable. The 3 of them hurriedly separated and rode on their espers to avoid the attack. The tricolored espers shined brightly, protecting their masters. But the power of the fire dragon was too strong. In contrast, the light of the espers were suppressed. Sha Danan and others were also pushed back by the huge wave of fire. After a moment, bang, 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 they hit the stone wall. The fire dragon shot up to the sky. The remaining power was shocking. Sha Danan's back hit the hard stone wall. His sight darkened from the pain. However, he could still be considered one of the lucky ones. After calming himself down, he saw that the huge body of the rock in the distance had actually crashed into a cave. Unfortunately, very soon, the roar of a ferocious beast could be heard from the cave. Sha Danan was surprised. He was about to help, but after Onara roared, the sound of bang bang came from the cave. After a few moments, the golden light flashed and disappeared. A giant body was thrown out. It was another strange-looking monster. From its appearance, even if it was still alive, it was not much. Sha Danan was relieved. He thought it was not unreasonable for this person to be called Onara. He was really harder than a rock. Just at this moment, The fire dragon that had charged into the sky made a circle in the air. With a wild roar, it charged back down like a bolt of lightning. The power of this charge was even more shocking. Shah Danon gritted his teeth, held the incantation mark, quickly moved 1 yard to the side, dodged the ferocious dragon head. His right hand pointed, the fire stick shot through the air, aimed at the dragon's neck. The fire dragon roared. The dragon eyes that were spitting out fire moved. The giant left dragon claw lifted up and blocked the green light of the fire stick. Shah Danon's face paled. He could only feel the heat wave was rolling toward him. He could only grit his teeth and hold on. At this moment, a delicate shout was heard. Above the abyss illuminated by the fire dragon, a green figure flashed past. Bai Yao's green dress fluttered, floated down gracefully. The heartache flower's white light flourished, dancing in the sky. The flower rained mournfully, shrouding the fire dragon's head. Roar! Within the raging flame, the fire dragon roared again. It grabbed with its right claw. The white flower rain was pushed back 3 feet. But Shah Danon and Bai Lu combined their power, immediately pushed the fire dragon down 1 yard and hit Onara, who just came out from the cave. Onara fixed his eyes and saw Shah Danon and Bai Lu were fighting against the fire dragon with all their strength. Their bodies were surrounded by fire. Although they had their esper to protect themselves, their faces were already red from the fire. Stone's eyes widened and he leaped into the air. While he was in midair, he sat cross-legged and raised the demon-shattering staff with both hands. In an instant, golden light shone brightly, and the entire wolf-tooth mace shone with golden light, almost becoming transparent. It was obvious that it was being activated with all its power. Stone's image was even more dignified, and from afar, he looked like a Buddhist monk. But he suddenly opened his eyes, like a Vajra of the demon-slaying sect. His power was overwhelming. His body turned into a flash of golden light in mid-air, streaking across the sky. With a loud bang, the entire shattering demon staff pierced into the hard stone wall. In an instant, the stone wall that was as hard as steel was dented. The area was about 4 yards. The veins on Onara's rough face bulged, almost terrifying. Even blood was coming out from his mouth. But the Shatterer staff in his hand was shining with golden light, impossible to look at directly. But in his roar, all of the golden light suddenly shrunk, gathered into a huge golden light, shot at the head of the fire dragon. The power of this attack was no small matter. It was the gathering of all of Onara's power. Even though the fire dragon was extremely fierce with the attack from the head, plus Shah Danon and Bai Lu's pincer attack under the heavy pressure, the fire dragon let out a long roar. The roar shook the valley, but still could not resist. It fell down and quickly submerged into the darkness under its feet. Onara's attack was successful, but his body was shaken. Blood flashed across his face. He almost fell down as well. Luckily, Shah Danon saw Onara's face was not right. He immediately rushed to his side and caught up with him. Then Onara steadied himself. But before the two of them could catch their breath, Bai Lu exclaimed again, her green dress fluttering, rushed down. Shah Danon took a glance. His soul almost left his body. The demon-like giant tentacle charged at them again, and this time it was going to hit at their heads. The wind hurt his face. Onara's breath was not stable yet. Shah Danon was caught off guard. He was about to die under the giant tentacle. Bai Lu's face was pale, but her body was like lightning. She flashed past and stood in front of Shah Danon. The heartsick flower in her hand instantly turned into 6 strange flowers, surrounding the flower in the middle. Each flower was connected with a pure white light, looked like a white light wheel. Shah Danon thought of the time when she fought against the black water mystical viper in Forsaken Abyss. Shah Danon remembered the time when she fought against the black water mystical viper in Forsaken Abyss. But obviously, this unknown creature in the darkness was also like the Blackwater mystical viper, both extremely powerful creatures. Although not as powerful as the Blackwater mystical viper, but the power of one attack, although Bai Yao's white light did not immediately scatter like that day against the Blackwater mystical viper, her body shook greatly and was immediately beaten down, about to be pressed into the boundless darkness. Shah Danan's mind was ringing. He felt the heat in front of his eyes. He did not know where his strength came from, and without thinking of anything, he let go of Onara, jumped down. The fire stick brightened with green light, quickly caught up with the twisted giant tentacle and Bailu, who was struggling to hold on. Bailu was struggling to hold on, but the pressure was like a mountain. When she was about to lose control, she saw Shah Danan suddenly appeared next to her. She was surprised, cried out, "You hurry, go." Before she finished, Shah Danan had already attached himself to the fire stick. The green light flashed, charged forward, and heavily hit on the giant tentacle above Bailu. The tentacles that were hit by the fire stick suddenly withered, and the originally slippery skin actually withered in an instant. The tentacle seemed to feel pain and immediately retracted. The pressure on Bailu was relieved. Seeing Shah Danan came to save her without caring about his own life, she was happy and worried. But before she could speak, her face turned pale. In the darkness, the giant tentacle reappeared. This time it was silent. It charged at Shah Danan from under his feet. Shah Danan was caught off guard. His body was in pain. He was caught by the tentacle and dragged down into the darkness. Bailu and Onara were pale at the same time. They did not say anything and chased after. Chapter 99. Not long after Bayao and the rest gave chase, this dark place, which had just gone through a fierce battle, was about to calm down. A sharp sound came from above. One white and one green light shot down, swayed twice, stopped temporarily. Appeared in the light was a man and a woman. It was Funxiang Valley's Li Sun and Yan Hong, these two people. Li Sun's handsome face was also slightly surprised. Using the light from the esper, looked around, said to Yan Hong, "Shimmy, didn't expect under this fox spirit's nest. There is such a cave." Yan Hong's face also showed some surprise, nodded and said, "Yes, I have never seen such a scene in the past. These many strange beasts most likely have never appeared in the world." Pausing, she quietly said, "Shi Xiang, the situation here is strange. Most likely it is extremely dangerous. We must be careful." Li Sun smiled faintly. His face showed some pride, said, "Shimmy, don't worry. That fox spirit only has 500 years of cultivation. It is nothing." Yan Hong smiled and said, "Senior, you are talented and have a profound cultivation. Naturally, you are not afraid of that evildoer. However, if the six-tailed demon fox is also with the three-tailed demon fox, with its 1,000 years of cultivation, I am afraid it will be troublesome." Li Sun looked at Yan Hong, revealed a smile, suddenly said, "Shimmy, although your words are nice to hear, but in your heart, I'm afraid you are saying that I, as a Shi Xiang, am greedy for achievements, very worried?" Yan Hong's mouth moved, quietly said, "Shi Xiang, you worry too much." Li Sun turned around, looked around, lightly said, "Shimmy, do you feel the temperature in this abyss is a little abnormal?" Yan Hong nodded, said, "Yes, after going so deep, it seems to be a little hotter." Li Sun said, "It's not just a little hotter, it's much hotter than usual. Also, on the way down, I've been paying attention to the black rocks in this abyss. I'm sure that in ancient times, magma shot out from tens of thousands of zhong underground and cooled down. This abyss most likely is a volcanic crater." Yan Hong let a soft cry. Immediately, her beautiful eyes moved, as if she suddenly realized something. She said, "You are saying," Li Sun continued, "That's right, that's what I meant. The demon fox purposely chose this volcanic crater as its lair. 300 years ago, the fox demon and her group of thieves were audacious and reckless, entering our Funxiang Valley's forbidden area, stealing the Inferno divine weapon. However, Shu Shangwan, who was guarding the divine palace that day, heard the news and rushed over. He displayed his divine power and captured a group of demon foxes. It's a pity that the six-tailed demon fox is cunning and became a fish that escaped the net." Speaking to this point, he suddenly sneered and continued, "But Shangwan Shu's skills are profound. The magical weapon, 9 chilling ice thorn that he has refined, is the world's first-class rare treasure. Its power unparalleled. In the past, when I was in the valley, I had heard from the valley master that although the six-tailed demon fox had luckily escaped, it had already been pierced by martial Uncle Shangwan's 9 chilling ice condensing thorn into its veins, destroying its cultivation foundation. In these 300 years, even if it didn't die, it would definitely be in unbearable pain. Its cultivation would be completely scattered. Moreover, the ice poison attacks its heart day and night, harming its body. Only by staying in a place with extreme yang and extreme heat can it slightly relieve the pain. Yannon smiled, said, "So that means the six-tailed demon fox is most likely in this abyss. Xixiang, you have great foresight. Little sister really admires you." Pride appeared on Li Su's face again, said, "We are Funxiang Valley's disciples, received great kindness from our master. Naturally, we cannot lose face for our master. This time, we only hope God bless us. Return the item to its rightful owner, return the divine weapon to its rightful place, and kill the demon." Yannon smiled and did not say anything. Li Su looked at her, said, "Let's go." Yannon nodded. The two of them rose up, turned into light again, rushed into the darkness. Sha Danan's right hand tightly held the fire stick, but his body was tightly bound by the giant tentacle. He could almost hear the sound of bones in his body groaning. There wasn't a single part of his body that didn't hurt. Then he was dragged down into the depths of the earth by the huge tentacle. The wind blew against his face, but he could only see stars flashing before his eyes. His mind was a mess, and some terrifying scenes kept flashing past. The length of the tentacle was really shocking. It dragged him down about 5 yards. Sha Danan used the dim light in the chaos and looked around in panic. In front of him, he was already at the bottom of the abyss. There was not a single blade of grass growing here. There was only a giant cave on the wall in front of him. It was 10 yards tall, 7 or 8 yards wide. It was pitch black inside, so deep that he could not see the bottom. The giant tentacle was the monster that came out from the giant cave. Seeing its back, it was even more enormous. If it was a living being, what would its body look like? Sha Danan was swung around by the tentacle in the air. His body was about to be dragged into the cave. But at this moment, a ghostly light flashed at the entrance of the cave. Three Tails Fox Spirit suddenly appeared with the Inferno mirror in her hand. She raised her head and saw Sha Danan was caught by the giant tentacle. He had no strength to fight back. A murderous look flashed across her face. She was about to turn around and say something to the cave. But for some reason, she thought of something and suddenly stopped. She turned around and looked deeply at Sha Danan, who was struggling in pain. She sighed, said quietly, "Look at the way you're looking at the well of full moon. You're also a lover." "Fine, fine." Then she raised the Inferno mirror in her hand and shined it at the cave. At the same time, she let out a strange howl. The sound was sharp, like the howl of a fox in the wild. After a moment, as if it received some order, the giant tentacle quickly retracted back into the cave. Sha Danan's eyes darkened. He could no longer see any light. He could only feel a strange, fishy smell. The surface of the tentacle that wrapped around him was slippery, but for some reason, it was holding him tightly. He could not move at all. At the same time, the Three Tails Fox Spirit heard the howl outside the cave. She raised her head and saw 2 beams of light, one gold and one white, shot down from the top of her head. She laughed coldly, then flashed back to the cave entrance. She shined the Inferno mirror into the cave and let out a howl that was similar to the previous one. The 2 beams of light were Onara and Bailu. They caught up with the Three Tails Fox Spirit. They were happy. Bailu was more cautious, but when she saw Sha Danan was not around, she was worried again. However, before the 2 of them could stabilize themselves, following the movement of the three-tailed fox spirit, a gust of wind suddenly rose from within the huge stone cave. Suddenly, another huge tentacle rushed out and struck at the 2 of them. Sha Danan was trapped in the darkness. He was dragged deeper into the cave by the tentacle. Along the way, he bumped into the wall of the cave. He even took a few turns. Although he did not bleed, his face was covered with dirt. But in this place where he could not see his fingers, no one could see it. He did not know how deep he was dragged. The fishy smell was getting thicker, but the surrounding was pitch dark without any light. He could not see the situation around him. But fortunately, although the giant tentacle was still tightly wrapped around his body, the three-tails fox spirit seemed to have ordered not to hurt him. So the tentacle did not continue to tighten. Shah Danan was able to have a moment of respite. Finally, the giant tentacle stopped at a dark place. It did not move, but it still strangled Shah Danan. Shah Danan gasped for breath, still in shock. The darkness was like a mountain in front of him, endless. Shah Danan suddenly felt, in front of him, in the depth of the darkness, there might be an unimaginable giant monster entrenched there. Thinking of that, his body was chilled from head to toe. In this ancient cave, it was like there was no light coming in since ancient time. It was as dark as ink. But this unknown world gave people the most ancient and deepest fear. The giant tentacle was constantly reminding him that in front of him, what kind of unimaginable creature he was facing. Time seemed to be frozen. From afar, there was the sound of fighting and loud noise. Although the sound was low, but it sounded familiar. Suddenly, in the depth of the darkness, there seemed to be something restlessly throbbing. In the darkness, there was a ripple. Although Shah Danan could not see it, but thousands of thoughts passed through his mind. He wondered if the giant monster's body was here, but it stretched out another tentacle and fought with Bailu and others outside the cave. But this thought did not last long. Shah Danan suddenly found the tentacle that was no longer tightening on him. Suddenly, like it was startled, or for some other reason, it began to tighten again. Although the speed was not fast, but with the size of the tentacle, the pressure was really powerful. Shah Danan's eyes darkened. His body was in great pain. He screamed and desperately used his own pure essence cultivation to hold on. But the tentacle was like a demon, unstoppable force he could not hold on. Seeing the ribs in his chest were cracking, the blood was boiling, Shah Danan could not care much anymore. He activated the other half of his secret cultivation, the Buddhism incantation Fawn Wisdom, from Skysong Temple's Puji Divine Monk, hoping it could hold on for a moment longer. Unexpectedly, once he started, this Buddhism Supreme True Way and Qing Yun Sect Taoism Wondrous Skill cultivation method was completely different. The circulation method was even more different. Immediately, it started to reject in his body. His entire body's meridians immediately felt as if they were being pricked by needles. Chapter 100. At the same time, the giant tentacle continued to press down. His bones and tendons were about to break. Shah Danan was at a loss in the darkness. His consciousness was also blurred by the great pressure. At this moment, at this critical moment of life and death, a strange passage of words suddenly flashed across his mind. Celestial phenomenon has no punishment. Tao praises no name. That is why there is no self, no person, no living being, no life that is the light. Hold the right path. The inner body has its own nature. The heaven and earth are its heart. These words seemed to light up in the depths of his heart, reverberating in his mind. Those were the words in the first volume of Tian Shu. He was puzzled. Buddhism and Taoism's cultivation methods were completely different. How could they merge into one? But at this moment, he was in a desperate situation. His body was on the verge of breaking apart, and he was in a state of extreme pain. However, somewhere in his mind, for some reason, gradually became clear. He even ignored the heart-wrenching pain, and only the words that were deeply engraved in his mind reverberated. That is why the heart of the heaven and earth moves in the earth. That is why there is no real and no void. That is why the nature of the heaven and earth does not do anything. That is why the thing does not exist. It is not enough to prepare. The fire stick that he held in his hand had lost its luster. At this moment, it suddenly lit up again. A faint dark green light appeared faintly. A cold feeling swam through his body. Shah Danan could not see anything in the darkness, but his eyes were wide open. Only one sentence echoed in his mind. That is why the thing does not exist. It is not enough to prepare. That is why the thing does not exist. It is not enough to prepare. That is why the thing does not exist. It is not enough to prepare. Ah. He raised his head, shouted to the sky, but his voice was already hoarse. That is why the thing does not exist. It is not enough to prepare. The great Brahman wisdom and the Tai Chi Xian Qing Dao Qi that had been fighting in his body all along, suddenly like a great flood, after colliding violently, they gushed out from his right arm and forced their way into the black fire stick. In a moment, the fire stick shone brightly. Under the dark green halo, the body of the fire stick seemed to be stimulated by something. The veins on the fire stick became clear bit by bit. Even the blood vessels seemed to have received fresh blood. They were faintly pulsating and throbbing, as if they were flowing with dark red and strange blood. Good G. Following the strange scene of the fire stick, strange sound came out from Shah Danan's body. But it was not the sound of bones breaking. It sounded like a violent heartbeat, like blood boiling, like the skin was pierced through, but there was no strange sound around him. Without knowing, Shah Danan regained his consciousness. Before he could figure out what happened to his body, he found he was still strangled by the giant tentacle. But the difference was after he had that moment of enlightenment and forced the Buddhist and Taoist incantation into the fire stick was glowing a little different than usual. In the dark green light, there was a thread of gold light. There was also the swaying blood-red light, ferocious, terrifying, very clear. This ball of light had pushed the tentacle away a small distance. But then Shah Danan found the power of the giant tentacle was too strong. It was like the tentacle found out Shah Danan's resistance suddenly became stronger. The force that was pushing inwards also pressed in with 10 times and 100 times force. In just a moment, the magic treasure halo that the fire stick once again emitted was already on the verge of collapse, unable to hold on any longer. Shah Danan was not an idiot. How could he not know it will be a dead end if this continues? He decided to take the risk. He gritted his teeth and used all his power. The light of the fire stick brightened. Using the last chance, Shah Danan roared and shot the fire stick like lightning at the tentacle that trapped him. With a muffled pu sound, the entire fire stick had sunk in. It was as if it had pierced through a divine weapon. In the darkness, the only light was the fire stick sunk into the tentacle. The surroundings immediately became dark, without any light. Feeling the presence of darkness, feeling the endless silence, Shah Danan held his breath for a moment. Break! A ray of light suddenly appeared. The light pierced a large hole on the tentacle. The strange light of the fire stick came out. Break! Another muffled sound. On the other side of the tentacle, another ray of light came out. Then break. The sound continued. Shah Danan opened his mouth wide. He looked at the giant tentacle that trapped him. It was like a piece of thin paper being pierced. More and more light came out from it, brightened the ground around him, and also brightened him. Soon, Shah Danan felt the tentacle that trapped him powerlessly slid down. At this moment, the fire stick also came out from the tentacle and returned to his hand. With the light of the fire stick, Shah Danan saw the giant tentacle on the ground. The giant tentacle was covered with wounds. Everywhere was dry and cracked. It was very different from the tough and slippery appearance just now. He had just escaped from the gates of hell. He was still in shock. The monster in front of him was also strange. It was so heavily wounded, but it still did not make any sound, as if it did not feel pain. Shah Danan's breath calmed down. When he was about to find a way out, he heard in the darkness in front of him, another scream came out. The huge wind came like a mountain. Shah Danan looked around with the dim light. He was so scared that his jaw almost dropped. Another giant tentacle came out from the darkness. The shadow was dancing wildly. There were countless of them. One tentacle almost took his life. How could he survive in this situation? The result could be imagined. Without thinking, Shah Danan used the fire stick and flew away. But when he flew for less than 10 feet, bang, he hit the hard stone wall with the stick. The pain went deep into his bones. The hit was not light. He felt there was something wet on his face. It was probably blood, but he did not have time to care about that. However, now that he was trapped in this pitch-black cave, he was like a blind man. When he was dragged in by the tentacle, He was confused and couldn't remember where he had come from. Like a headless fly, he held onto the fire stick and almost completely relied on his instincts and the loud sound of the wind. He randomly bumped into the stone walls. Anyway, as long as he could hide, he would do so. But the tentacle in the darkness was not only large, but also very agile. Shah Danon ran for his life, but he heard the sound of the wind behind him. He was terrified. At the moment of life and death, he closed his eyes and shouted. He rushed forward with the fire stick, hoping to get as far away from the tentacle as possible. Unexpectedly, under the force of his desperate dash, although the fire stick's speed had increased dramatically, the stone wall in front of it did not give it any face. After flying for less than 30 feet, it crashed into the stone wall with a rumbling sound. But this time it seemed a bit strange. The stone wall seemed to be relatively weak, and when he crashed into it, he was actually knocked in. There was even some light coming out of it, and there was even a scorching heat wave coming out. Shah Danon was surprised. But before he could recover, in fact, there was no way to recover. No matter how hard his head is, no matter how strong his esper is, after this hit, his head and feet will be dizzy. He felt his body was empty. He fell into a narrow and sloping tunnel and rolled down. Shah Danon did not know how long he had been rolling. But on the way, in the chaos, Shah Danon could only feel his surroundings were filled with red light. And at the same time, the heat wave was burning. His hands were burning, and when he touched his wounds, it was so painful he saw stars. Actually, if Shah Danon could last until now, he was more like a stone compared to Onara, who was fighting outside. Finally, the rolling stopped. Shah Danon's mouth was bleeding. His face was full of wounds. His body felt like it was about to fall apart. He slowly raised his head while moaning. Then he was stunned. In front of him was a large underground cave. But different than before, this place was filled with red-hot magma. It formed a scorching lake and filled the entire bottom of the cave. On the surface of the lake, there were hot bubbles rising, then burst. There was also a turbulent place like the tide. The hot magma bounced up to mid-air. The red flames emitted by the magma turned the huge cave into a red world. As for Shah Danon himself, he was on a platform above the magma lake. Behind him was an upward tunnel. He rolled down from here. In front of him, at the end of the platform, near the place where the magma was so hot that it was almost unbearable, there was an oval-shaped stone nest. A white fox was quietly lying on it. A white big fox. Its eyes were closed, like it was sleeping peacefully. Its body was curled up, very quiet. Very, very beautiful. Shah Danon slowly stood up, held his breath, and slowly walked toward it. Slowly, step by step, he walked toward it. The heat wave was getting hotter, burned Shah Danon's face red, but he did not feel it. His pair of wide-opened eyes only saw the beautiful, beautiful, gentle, quiet fox and the place behind it. There, under the beautiful fur, was curling his tail quietly. The small and beautiful fur, the place where it diverged but harmoniously, there were 6 tails. Chapter 101. In the scorching underground cave, the heat wave was rolling. The red magma under the platform was boiling, making the sound of explosion. Shah Danon felt it was difficult to breathe. It was like the air he breathed into his lungs was boiling hot. In this place where it felt like a random step would cause sparks to fly, the white 6-tailed fox in front of him was still lying there quietly. It looked like it was enjoying itself. Enjoying it. He stood there, looked forward, hesitated for a moment, then walked forward. At the same time, he subconsciously held the fire stick in his hand. The platform was long and narrow, extended to the depth of the magma lake. As Shah Danon got closer, the surrounding temperature became hotter and hotter, almost to an unbearable degree. Not sure if it was because of the heat or other reasons, Shah Danon's throat was very dry. But he did not dare to be distracted. His eyes were staring at the fox. He stopped when he was about 3 paces away from it. As the distance was closer, he could see it more clearly. He suddenly realized that it was a beautiful fox. Pure white fur from top to bottom, especially in this place like fire hell, it was still like snow. Not to mention a strand of hair, there was not even a trace of being burnt. But its eyes were closed. The space between the eyes was slightly wrinkled, like there was a trace of pain between its eyebrows. Shah Danon looked at it. Countless thoughts flashed through his mind. From Laguna Collective until now, all he heard was that there was a three-tails fox spirit harming here. But looking at the fox in front of him, it was clearly different from the three-tailed demon fox he had fought against earlier. He vaguely remembered. When he was young, he heard Shixiao Xavion said, "The world is big. There are all kinds of strange things, beautiful mountains and rivers, also many monsters." According to the old legend, fox is the most intelligent among the beasts. Many of them have cultivated into a monster. And in the fox demon clan, there was a branch that had the most spiritual energy, had a special characteristic. That was the higher the cultivation, the deeper the cultivation, the more tails they had. Looking at the six-tailed fox, Shah Danon's heart skipped a beat. At this moment, the six-tailed fox before him seemed to have woken up from a deep slumber. Its tail and head swayed slightly. After that, it opened its eyes. His black and deep pupils reflected the figure of the slightly nervous young man in front of him. Shah Danon was surprised. He took a step back, placed the fire stick across his chest, and prepared. Unexpectedly, the six-tailed white fox only looked at him. Its body was still lying in the green stone nest, and it did not look like it was going to make a move. A man and a fox, facing each other. There was no sound in the surroundings, only the rumbling of the lava lake that seemed to have existed for tens of thousands of years, yet it seemed so far away. The air was still scorching hot, drifting between humans and foxes. "Young man," a low voice that seemed to carry a trace of exhaustion came from the fox's mouth, breaking the silence here. "What are you doing here?" From the voice of the fox, Shah Danon once again confirmed that the fox was injured. That was why its voice was so weak. But even so, he still did not dare to be careless, said in a deep voice, "You devils harms the people. I am a disciple of the righteous. Today, I will eliminate the evil for the people." The six-tailed white fox looked at him. Its eyes sparkled. There was no anger, no ridicule, only looked at him lightly. After a while, it moved its eyes away, said calmly, "Good ambition." Shah Danon startled, then frowned and shouted, "Don't give me that. Get up quickly, I dash. You're going to kill me, right?" The six-tailed white fox suddenly interrupted him, asked calmly. Shah Danon did not expect it would say it so directly. He paused for a moment, then immediately realized, said, "You foxes are harming the world, harming many people. Killing you is doing justice for the heaven." The six-tailed white fox turned its head. Its eyes seemed to have ridicule and also desolation, said, "Young man, I see your age is not more than 20. Shah Danon snorted, said, "So what? I am also going to subdue the devils." The six-tailed white fox lowered its head, suddenly felt a little emotional, said quietly, "Yes, you humans are truly blessed by the heavens when it comes to cultivation. We foxes have been cultivating hard for thousands of years. Those with good potential among you only need a few hundred years to surpass us. Just like that Shangwan old bastard." Then it suddenly stopped, smiled bitterly, shook its head, looked at Shah Danon, said slowly, "Young man, you are so young. How do you know we foxes are harming the world, harming many people?" Shah Danon laughed coldly, said, "That three-tails fox spirit's companions harass Laguna Collective citizens day and night. Not only did they rob countless of cattle and sheep, they also killed people. Isn't that harming the world, harming many people?" The six-tailed white fox was silent for a moment, then said, "That's right. I heard about it from her. It was indeed like what you said 3 days ago when she went upon town. That father and son actually dared to block her, and it just so happened that I was seriously ill that day, and she was in a bad mood, so she killed those two fools who didn't know life from death." Shah Danon said angrily, "What else do you have to say?" The six-tailed white fox said lightly, "You are mistaken. I am not trying to differentiate you. Even if it was me that day, I would still kill them." Shah Danon was angry. He pointed at it, said angrily, "Then you dare to say it is not harming the world, harming many people. Devil die." The green light of the fire stick rose, was about to break through the air. The six-tailed white fox did not intend to move, still lying there, said lightly, "What do you mean by the world?" Shah Danon startled again. Suddenly, looking at the six-tailed white fox, listening to its low voice, he suddenly remembered the Wan Rin Wang. Vaguely, somewhere in the depths of his heart, there seemed to be an inexplicable voice calling out to him. The light of the fire stick slowly faded. However, the white fox's voice continued. "In your eyes, the so-called world is ruled by the human race, right? Everything in the world is for you humans to take whatever you want. As long as there is any resistance, it is harming the world, harming many people. It is an unforgivable sin, deserving of death, right?" Shah Danon looked at it, silent, and did not say anything. He did not know why the three-tailed fox spirit and the six-tailed white fox liked to talk to him. But what he didn't understand was why these words, which sounded so rebellious, had such a great impact on his mind. But have you ever thought about the feeling of the other races? The beasts that were killed and eaten by you humans. How do they feel? At the end of the day, it is only because you humans are strong. The beasts are powerless to resist, can only wait to be killed. The white fox's voice continued calmly. "If that is so, we fox spirit are stronger than you humans. Then what's wrong with killing some of you? In this world, it is the law of the jungle." It smiled, looked at Shah Danon and said, "What do you think?" Shah Danon stared at it, tightened his lips, did not say anything. "Also, even among you humans, isn't it the same? You cultivators of alchemy haven't reached immortality yet, but you fight each other so happily. The so-called good and evil is actually not only said by your own mouth, it is just the winner is the king, the loser is the bandit." It smiled again, looked at Shah Danon, repeated, "What do you think?" Shah Danon closed his eyes, lifted his head, took a deep breath. The white fox did not say anything. After saying so many words, it also felt a little tired. After a long time, "What do you want me to say?" Shah Danon suddenly said. The white fox looked at him, found he had opened his eyes. The young man's complicated but bright eyes were looking at it. "Every one of you, always say this and that to me." Shah Danon said coldly, "It is like me being a righteous is wrong, and you killing people and creating chaos is right. You evil heretics, besides deceiving people, what else can you do?" The white fox suddenly frowned. Light flashed in its eyes, suddenly said, "What? Has anyone else said such words to you?" Shah Danon did not answer, but the green light of the fire stick brightened again, reflecting his face, changing unpredictably. His voice was heard saying, "Evildoer, do it." The green light was like this, faintly arriving, actually overshadowing the blazing red light that was everywhere like a great mountain crashing down, piercing through the air. The six-tailed white fox saw the pressing green light. In this hot lava place, there was a trace of coldness. Its body shivered uncontrollably. At this moment, Shah Danon suddenly heard behind him, from the tunnel where he fell, came the sound of galloping. That sound was like the roar of a beast, and also like thousands of soldiers and horses. The iron hooves were raging. The momentum was already there. Shah Danon was surprised, but he did not dare to lower his guard against the six-tailed white fox. He immediately retrieved the fire stick, held it in front of his chest, and focused. Chapter 102. At a place far away, the six-tailed white fox also frowned, looked at the tunnel. Soon, Shah Danon felt the heat wave coming from the tunnel became hotter and hotter. Breathing became more difficult. It almost felt like people were going to be cooked in the lava cave. While he was surprised, he heard the sound was getting closer. The aura was getting fiercer. A moment later, he felt his eyes light up. The dark tunnel suddenly shone brightly, and a huge fire dragon rushed out of the narrow tunnel. After it came out, the fire dragon roared, rose into the sky, baring its teeth and claws. A white figure flashed on top of the dragon's head. A white figure floated down. It was the extremely gentle three-tailed fox spirit. She landed in front of the six-tailed white fox. For some reason, there was a hint of panic on her face. Her originally neat and tidy clothes were now torn in a few places. It seemed like she had suffered some losses in the battle outside. Shah Danon, startled, stood where he was, did not move forward. His eyes were attracted by the large fire dragon that was swimming in midair. The fire dragon's body was burning with fire. Even its eyes were two balls of large white flame. The fire dragon seemed to be nourished by something in the underground lava cave. Its aura became fiercer. With the dragon roar, the fire dragon charged down. Shah Danon was surprised. He quickly stepped back. The fire dragon only brushed past his side. Under the heat wave, the fire dragon roared and drilled into the lava lake. It disappeared in a blink of an eye. After a moment, it came out again, happily swimming in the scorching hot lake. Suddenly, the faint voice of the three-tailed fox spirit came. "Big brother, are you all right?" The six-tailed white fox smiled and said coolly, "This little brother from the righteous Tao has yet to make a move against a dying fox like me." Shah Danon blushed, then frowned. Listening to the six-tailed white fox's words, it seemed like it was dying. Three-tailed fox spirit's face was a bit sad, said quietly, "Big brother, beside the two people that came with this young man, there are also two people from Incense Valley." The six-tailed white fox spirit's body shook, turned to her, said, "Is it that old man Shangwan?" Three-tailed fox spirit shook her head, said, "No, it is two young disciples, but their cultivation is very high. I am not their opponent." The six-tailed white fox was stunned for a moment. It sighed and said, "Sigh, you only have 300 years of cultivation. Even if you have the Inferno Mirror, how can you fight against the outstanding disciples of the famous factions?" "Fine, fine." On the extremely charming face of the three-tailed fox demon, two streaks of tears rolled down. "But, big brother, there's no way out of this fire dragon cave, and the top is sealed by the four of them. Right now, we can only rely on the big black leech to barely hold them off. But I see that their magic weapons are powerful. I'm afraid that in less than the time it takes for a stick of incense to burn, they'll come down. What should we do?" The six-tailed white fox looked at her, struggled to lift its front paw, like it wanted to catch her. But when it was in the air, it dropped down again. It panted for a while, then said, "You still can't see? Even if they don't come, I can't make it." Three-tailed fox spirit's tears fell on the white fox's snow-white fur. Instead, the white fox's voice sounded much calmer. "For the past 300 years, I ran to the east and fled to the west. Day and night, I lived in darkness, not only afraid of Funxiang Valley coming to kill me, but also had to endure the 9 cold ice condensing thorn ice poison attack my body day and night. But until today, I still can't escape." Three-tailed demon fox sorrowfully said, "Big brother, don't say any more. I will bring you out now. We still have the Inferno Mirror. With your skills, you can definitely." The white fox slowly shook its head, quietly said, "My close to 1,000 years of skills foundation in these 300 years has been destroyed bit by this 9 cold ice freezing thorns ice poison. Now my whole body is cold in my bone marrow. I can't make it." Three-tailed fox spirit's body trembled, couldn't speak anymore. The white fox lifted its head, hesitated for a moment, then said, "I really can't make it, but you don't need to die. You have the Inferno Mirror. When they rush down the tunnel, you can summon the fire dragon and go against them. They will be surprised. They may not be able to stop you. You're still." It suddenly stopped talking. Three-tailed fox spirit slowly stood up, reached in her bosom, took out an esper with red tassels on both ends. It was the Inferno Mirror. In this steaming lava cave, the Inferno Mirror was also illuminated faintly red, and in the middle of it, that ancient fire totem, right now also seemed to be burning, almost spurting out. Three-tailed fox spirit, the gentle white dress girl in Shah Danon's eyes, was staring at the Inferno Mirror in her hand. Not long after, a tear quietly fell on the Inferno Mirror. After a moment, it turned into white smoke, rose up. It turned out that foxes also had tears. It turned out that evildoers also had feelings. Shah Danon startled, motionless. 300 years, big brother," she said quietly, sorrowfully. 300 years since the day I met you at Fox Branch Mountain. From then on, I followed you. Into the world, 6 Harmonies wilderness. From then on there is no daylight. From then on worry. being hunted, but I have never regretted. Shah Danon slowly walked a few steps, stood behind them. His heart was suddenly confused. When he heard the 3 words Fox Branch Mountain, his heart moved, felt it was familiar, but he could not remember. The gentle girl's eyes were filled with tears. But today, why? Why are you asking me to leave? The white fox lowered its head. At the same time, Shah Danon noticed its body, either because of cold or excitement, began to tremble. Big brother, the gentle woman suddenly screamed. Her voice was so sad. The white fox quickly raised its head. Shah Danon was also surprised by her. He turned around and looked. She gently placed the ancient-shaped inferno mirror on her chest. It stuck to her chest, emitted a faint glow. The white fox's body began to tremble. Somehow, with strength, she lifted up her upper body, screamed, "No!" Bang! A muffled sound, but it was like hit on Shah Danon's heart. He stood behind the gentle girl, watched the light of the inferno mirror appear on her gentle back. Bit by bit, drop by drop, gathered into a beam of hot light, pierced through her gentle body. The surrounding world, all the sounds at that moment suddenly became so far away. All the killing, the stubbornness in the heart, slowly faded away. In the young man's eyes, there was only red blood, dripping from the gentle and beautiful body, dripping onto the ground, became a bright red flower, then slowly seeped into the rocks. The blood-red land will never fade. She powerlessly fell in front of the white fox. The white fox let out a hoarse cry, but Shah Danon could not understand what it was shouting. He could only see the white fox was screaming, its body was trembling, struggling to crawl forward, crawling to the weak, dying body not far away. But it was so weak, after struggling for a long time, it could only crawl half a step. Shah Danon suddenly rushed to it. He rushed to it. At that moment, he seemed to forget everything. He carefully held up the heavily wounded, gentle girl's body, placed it in front of the white fox, then silently stepped back, stood in front of them. At that moment, from the tunnel, came another whistling sound, then a loud bang. Something fell from the tunnel. It was dry black, but Shah Danon could clearly recognize it was a part of the giant tentacle that trapped him. He turned around in a daze and stared at the 2 fox demons in front of him. The white fox grabbed onto the charming woman, its entire body trembling violently. Its once beautiful fur, at this moment, was rapidly withering at a visible speed. "You!" His voice was hoarse, like every word was tearing his heart. The charming woman, the evildoer called the 3-tailed demon fox, had a face as pale as paper, without a trace of blood. But unexpectedly, she was still as gentle as ever, as if the fear of dying and the tearing pain in her chest could not affect her at all. Until now, she was still looking at the white fox gently. "Big brother, now, you can't ask me to leave." The white fox choked with sobs. She raised her hand, like wanting to touch him, but when it was halfway, it fell down. Her blood dyed the white fox's chest. Even her voice, slowly, became lower. "Big brother, I will be with you. Together." She closed her eyes, never opened them again. The entire world quieted down. Chapter 103. The inferno mirror on her chest slowly calmed down. All of the light slowly disappeared. Shah Danon suddenly realized that the giant fire dragon that was rolling below them had disappeared. Really, after a long time, he was stunned on the spot. Millions of thoughts were surging in his mind, but he still felt that his mind was blank. The 6-tailed white fox was silent for a long time, then slowly raised its head, said to Shah Danon, "Young man, come here." Shah Danon slowly walked over. Behind him, in the tunnel, the howling wind was getting louder and louder. The 6-tailed white fox was still hugging the unconscious body. Its face had returned to calmness. Even its voice was calm like water. "Can you do me a favor?" Shah Danon was silent for a moment, said, "What?" The white fox looked at the woman in his arms and said quietly, "Throw both of us into the magma below." Shah Danon suddenly lifted his head, took a step back. The white fox looked at him, did not say a word. Shah Danon opened his mouth wide. Seemed like he wanted to say something, but could not say a word. His eyes, like being burned by fire, began to heat up. He nodded heavily. The white fox smiled, hugged the girl in his arms tightly. 1 step, 2 steps. Sha Danon held the 2 foxes who were hugging each other, slowly walked toward the end of the platform. The raging heat wave under his feet roared. Finally, he reached the end, stood at the edge of life and death. The white fox's face suddenly became a little better. It lifted its head, looked at the young man. No one saw Sha Danon's expression at this moment. Then it suddenly smiled, like all the grudges were forgotten, like an old elder looking at the young man. Young man, why are you doing this? Sha Danon did not say anything. The white fox gently picked up the inferno mirror on the girl's chest. With the last of its strength, it pulled Sha Danon's right sleeve, tied the inferno mirror to his arm with the red silk tassels. This is the ultimate godly item that our fox clan exchanged with countless lives. Give it to you as a souvenir. It smiled, and at the same time, its body began to tremble violently again. Black blood came out from its mouth, but don't let others see it. Finally, his voice became softer. Sha Danon bit his lips, took a deep breath, then loosened his hands. Far away, with a loud sound, Bai Yao and Shi Tu, as well as Li Sun and Yan Hong of Funxiang Valley, shot out from the tunnel like lightning and appeared on the platform. He happened to see Zhang Xiao Fan throw the 2 foxes into the lava. Sha Danon stood at the end of the platform, unaware of what was happening behind him, staring at the figure rolling in the air. A gust of wind blew out of nowhere and fluttered his clothes. There was a faint flash of light, and the charming woman flipped gracefully. She took off her mortal clothes and revealed her true form, a beautiful 3-tailed fox. The 2 foxes who had lost their lives but were still beautiful hugged each other tightly, rolled in the air, and fell down. Then, accompanied by a muffled sound, they melted into the lake and disappeared without a trace. Bai Yao was a little worried. She walked up and shouted, "Xiao Fan." But that youth acted as if he didn't hear anything. He just stood there in a daze, not moving at all, coming out from Dragon Cave, then through the dark black Drake Cave, finally returned to the surface. At this moment, the sky was already bright. Everyone let out a long sigh of relief, including Li Sun and Yan Hong. From their expression, they were also a little tired. It could be imagined, the monster called Big Black Leech, Note 1, that was defeated by the 4 of them last night was not easy to deal with. But only Sha Danon, for some reason, kept silent. Bai Lu, who was standing next to him, asked him softly. Sha Danon only shook his head. Li Su looked at them, then walked to Sha Danon, said to Sha Danon, "So, Zhang Shidi managed to escape from the disaster, escape from Forsaken Abyss. Congratulations." Sha Danon forced a smile, nodded, returned the salute. "Thank you, Li Shixiao." Then Yanin also walked to them. Her expression was much gentler than Li Su. She smiled. "Zhang Shidi, you are very lucky. After escaping from disaster, there will be good fortune in the future." As she spoke till here, she suddenly smiled. "Speaking of which, when we were in the Forsaken Abyss, because we couldn't find you, those few people from your sect were really anxious, especially that senior sister Lu of yours." Sha Danon's heart moved. He raised his head and looked at Yanin. She was smiling and looked at Li Su. Li Sun felt Yan Hong's gaze and gave a rare smile. However, there was a faint light flashing in the depths of his eyes. He slowly nodded and said, "That's right. Your fellow disciples are very worried about you. You better go back and report your safety." Sha Danon was touched. He slightly bowed. "Thank you both." Yanin smiled and bowed back. Her eyes unintentionally glanced at the green dress girl standing next to Sha Danon. She was pretty, but her face was a bit gloomy. Yanin was always careful. She immediately noticed it. She looked at Bai Lu a few more times, then asked Sha Danon, "Zhang Shixiang, may I ask who they are?" Sha Danon turned his head, said, "Oh, this one is called Onara. He is a disciple of the righteous cultivator's Vajra Gate, herald of Hercules." Then he said to Onara, "Sure, Dage, these 2 are Incense Valley's Li Su Shixiang and Yanin Shiji." Rock instantly felt deep veneration when he heard this. In the eyes of the cultivators, Incense Valley's reputation was not below the famous Jadian. He immediately saluted, "Nice to meet you too." Li Su and Yanin bowed back. Yanin smiled. Sure, Dage's cultivation is very high. Onara's face blushed, but he was a straightforward person. Pride appeared on his face. He smiled. You flatter me. Yanin smiled and turned around, glanced at Bailu, then said to Shah Danan, What about this lady? Shah Danan stopped, did not say anything. Bailu stood next to him, her eyes turned cold. Onara saw they did not say anything, smiled. This is Miss Bailu. She is Brother Zhang's friend. Her cultivation is very high. Li Su looked at Bailu, but saw she had no intention to greet him, so he turned his head away. But Yan Hong seemed to be very attentive to Bai Yao, smiled and said, Ah, so is Miss Bailu. I wonder which house you are from. Bailu glanced at Shah Danan, but he was silent. She suddenly laughed coldly, said, I don't belong to any faction, born alone. Once I helped someone, but I was despised by them. Shah Danan frowned when he heard it. Yanin was looking at her with a smile. Li Su coughed, said to Shah Danan, Zhang Shidi, I have something to ask you. Shah Danan did not dare to be slow, said, Li Shi Xiao, please say it. Li Su looked at him, said slowly, Zhang Shidi is the first person to enter Dragon Cave. Can I ask you, in the cave, or on the White Fox, did you see a jade bracelet with fire totem in the middle and red tassels on both ends? Shah Danan's heart jumped, but Onara already shouted, Yes, yes. Last night when we were fighting with Three Tails Fox Spirit, we saw her use that esper. Li Su and Yanin were happy at the same time, but Yanin's mind was more careful. She thought for a moment, then asked Li Su, Then why when we went down last night, Three Tails Fox Spirit did not summon Inferno Mirror? Li Su said lightly, She used Inferno Mirror to summon the Fire Dragon to fight against us. That Inferno Mirror must be on her. Yanin pondered and nodded. Li Su turned to Shah Danan, said, Zhang Shidi, Inferno Mirror is an important treasure of our faction. It is very important. Have you seen it? Everyone's eyes were fixed on Shah Danan. Shah Danan took a deep breath, silent for a moment, then said lightly, No. Li Su, startled, frowned. Yanin's eyes turned to Shah Danan, pondered, Why? When Zhang Shixiang fought with Three Tails Fox Spirit and Six Tails Fox Devil, they did not use Inferno Mirror? Shah Danan was silent for a moment, then said, Last night, I accidentally stumbled into the Dragon Cave. I found the White Fox, the Six Tails Fox magic you mentioned, was already seriously ill, dying. When Three Tails Fox Spirit came in, it was probably because of the fight with the four of you outside. It was also heavily injured. It didn't take me much effort to beat them down. Chapter 104. Disappointment immediately appeared on Yanin and Li Su's face. Yan Hong turned her head and looked at Li Sun. Li Sun faintly said, Before coming out from Hualong Cave, I had already carefully searched the nearby places. There was no trace of the Inferno Mirror. Most likely it had fallen into the lava together with them. Yanin sighed, then said, Never mind, Li Shixiang. No matter what, we killed the remaining fox spirits. At least we can answer to our faction. Li Su nodded, then turned around, saluted to Shah Danan and others, said, If so, Shimmy and I still need to return to Incense Valley to report to our faction. We will leave first. Shah Danan and Onara quickly said, Please. Only Bailu's face was still dark, standing at the side, not moving. Li Su nodded, said to Yanin, Shimmy, let's go. Yanin smiled and nodded, then suddenly remembered something, turned to Shah Danan, said, Zhang Shixiang, recently the Falcon are restless again. Jadian will gather the rest of the righteous at E.C. Billows Hill. I heard your master's faction will go there. Why don't you go and meet them? Shah Danan was surprised. Then his face turned to joy, said, Really? They all went to Billows Hill. Then I will go there immediately. Yanin smiled and nodded, said, That's good. After Li Shixiang and I return to our faction, we may also go there. Let's meet again if we are fated. Then she turned around, walked a few steps with Li Sun. Yan Hong suddenly turned back, smiled at Bai Yao, and said, Bai Yao, lady, the golden bell on your waist is really beautiful. Bailu's face changed. The golden bell on her waist was the joyful bell that Lady Jingling left behind when she and Shah Danan were trapped in Blooddrop Cave underforsaken abyss. When Yannin mentioned it, she almost mistakenly thought the gentle female disciple of Incense Valley had already seen through her identity. But Yanhong only said this sentence, as if nothing had happened, only smiled at her and left with Li Sun. Bailu frowned. Her heart was uncertain. Suddenly she felt something and looked to the side. Sha Danan was also looking at her. The three of them left the forest outside the Dark Drake Cave. They passed by the full moon well last night. Bailu remembered Three Tails Fox Spirit had asked Sha Danan what he saw in there, so she also asked him a few questions. Sha Danan startled, but did not answer, only shook his head. Bailu was angry, so she didn't ask him anymore. But she was very curious, so she walked over. She looked down from the ancient well, only to see that the well was deep and serene. The water was clear, reflecting her own face. It was extremely beautiful, but there was nothing strange about it, so she did not take it to heart. They left the forest and returned to Pond Town. The mayor and the other commoners were already waiting anxiously, and when they saw their figures, they immediately surrounded them. When they heard Shirtu say in a loud voice that this evildoer had been eliminated, that in the future all of them could live in peace, everyone cheered thunderously, all of them in high spirits. Sha Danan stood at the side, watching the happy crowd. His heart was confused. The figure of the two fox spirits appeared in his eyes again. When Li Sun asked him about the Inferno Mirror, he naturally knew that the thing they were looking for was actually tied to his arm, but for some reason, he recalled what the white fox said. As a matter of fact, he had only met the six-tailed magic fox for one night, and there was no friendship between them. However, the three-tailed magic fox had committed suicide, and the six-tailed magic fox had jumped into the scorching magma with her in its arms. That soul-stirring scene was still fresh in his mind. In the depths of his heart, he actually felt close to that demon fox, and for some reason, he told Li Sun that he did not know, and hid it from them. Rockhead struggled free from the crowd with great difficulty. He gave the two of them a meaningful look. Sha Danan and Bailu looked behind him and saw the villagers were still waiting for more. They were still surrounding them with a smile. Onara turned to the crowd, said, "Everyone, please listen to me. This matter is finished. We need to continue our cultivation. Today we will bid farewell here. As for the silver, I and my two companions have thanked you. But silver is just a worldly possession. It is useless. Everyone please return." Then he quickened his steps, pulled Sha Danan, whispered, "Let's go." The common people only saw the three of them turn into a few streaks of lightning and disappear with two whistling sounds. They sighed endlessly and gathered together to discuss for a while before gradually dispersing. But after the crowd dispersed at the corner of the street, an old and a young walked out, looking at the direction where the three of them disappeared. Looking over, it was the fortune-teller Zhou Yixian and his granddaughter Xiaohuan. Tanis Yixian looked at that direction. Seeing there was no one around, he whispered to Tani, "Can't believe even though the Three Tails Fox Spirit has the Inferno Mirror, she was still eliminated by those people." Tani was holding a stick of newly bought candied haws. Enjoying it, she said, "If that Esper is really as powerful as you said, how could the Three Tails Fox Spirit get into trouble? I think that the Inferno Mirror or whatever is just an undeserved reputation." Tanis frowned. "Inferno Mirror is an ancient divine relic, no doubt. I think that Three Tails Fox Spirit's cultivation is not enough, unable to use the full power of Inferno Mirror. In addition, two more powerful figures from Funxiang Valley came last night. It is hard for her to escape her doom." Tani looked at him, said, "You say who got the Inferno Mirror?" Tanis shrugged. "Most likely it was taken back by the two disciples of Incense Valley. Never mind, Sai. Originally wanted to go in and see if there's anything good, didn't expect." Tani spat out the core of the candied haws, said, "Then where are we going now, Grandpa?" Tanis pondered for a moment, said, "I heard the good and evil people are all going to the East Sea. Don't know the reason. And the direction the three people are going is the east. Why don't we follow them and see?" Tani laughed, said, "Then let's go. It's the same wherever we go." After Sha Danan and others left, Laguna Collective returned to its usual peace. There were no more monsters coming out from the dark Drake cave to harm the people. But the strange thing was, not long after, in the forest outside of the dark Drake cave, there were many more beasts. Some of them looked strange. The people of Laguna Collective had never seen them before. In the following days, 9 out of 10 people who accidentally went into the forest never came out. But those monsters have a special characteristic: they will not come out from the forest. Later, the people of Laguna Collective realized this. No one went to the forest anymore. As time passed, that place became more and more desolate. There was no one there, and no one could remember what had happened in that forest. After Shah Danon and others left, the people of Laguna Collective sighed. After that, they built a celestial ancestral hall at the east side of the town. There were 3 celestials worshipped there. The one in the middle was tall and strong like Vajra. Next to him were a man and a woman. The woman was very beautiful, but the man was very strange. He was holding something like a fire stick in his hand. As time passed, the people had already forgotten what happened today, but the fairies' temple in Laguna Collective was still very prosperous. Although some people tried to research, they still could not guess which group of gods they were. They said they were the Earth Bodhisattva of Laguna Collective, but they did not look like it. Not sure if it was because they had been worshipping for a long time. It was said that the people who went to the fairies' temple to pray to the gods were very effective. After the fame spread, people from the surrounding villages also came to pay their respects. Some prayed for their fortune, some prayed to become officials, and some even got pregnant and prayed to give birth. They also came to pay their respects to the statues of stone and the others. If the 3 of them knew about this, what would they think? Note 1. Strange Tales of Divinities, Monsters Chapter, Big Black Leech. Ancient species, living in the dark underground cave. Large body, 10 feet tall, tentacles, several feet long, carnivorous. Anyone near will be caught and eaten, no bones can be seen. Chapter 105. After Shah Danon, Bailu, and Onara left Laguna Collective, they headed east. After flying for a distance, they landed on the ground. Onara first asked Shah Danon, "Brother Zhang, where are you going next?" Shah Danon pondered for a moment, said, "Since Incense Valley's Yanan Shiji said my master is going to see Billows Hill, then I will also go and see them. What about you?" Onara thought for a moment, said, "Then I will also go. Master told me to travel around the world, cultivate and accumulate good deeds. This time I heard the Falcon Remnant is going to stir up trouble again. I will also go and help them." Suddenly, a cold laugh came. It was Bailu snorted, said coldly, "Good ambition, good righteousness. Don't fail to subdue the evil, and be subdued by the Falcon Remnant instead." Onara, startled, did not know what to say. He turned to Shah Danon. Shah Danon was embarrassed. He looked at Bailu, also speechless like Onara. Bailu laughed coldly. "What are you looking at me for?" Shah Danon and Onara looked at each other. Shah Danon was better. After all, he had lived with Bailu for a period of time. He more or less knew her temper. He also knew Bailu's identity, so he did not care too much. But Stone was a straightforward man. At this moment, he was suddenly rebuked by Bailu for no reason. His heart was upset, but he was too embarrassed to get angry at this pretty, delicate girl, so he could only keep it in his heart. He thought about how his master had warned him many times before he left that he must stay away from women. He said that the most unreasonable people in the world were women, especially beautiful young women. Today he saw it. It was really so. His master was really wise. Shah Danon looked at Onara. He was lost in thought and did not say a word. He felt a little sorry. He did not know this guy was sighing in his heart, talking about the women in the world and praising his master's wisdom. He thought Onara was angry because Bailu said a few words to him. He turned around and looked at Bailu. Seeing her cold face, he sighed and said, "Where are you going?" Bailu glanced at him, snorted and said, "None of your business." Shah Danon was choked by her. He couldn't say anything, but he was not angry. After all, if he went to East Sea Billows Hill, he will be her enemy. It is normal for her to be angry. At this moment, Onara walked behind Shah Danon. His eyes were filled with sympathy. He patted Shah Danon's shoulder with a look of understanding. Shah Danon looked at him, opened his mouth, but could not say a word. He felt the situation was really embarrassing. He could not say anything, really depressed. At the end of that day, Shah Danon and Onara still could not find out where Bailu was going. In fact, after they were rebuked by Bailu, they didn't dare to ask anymore. Anyway, they were heading east. Bailu was walking in front of them. Along the way, she was not in a good mood. The cold words were endless. At the end, Shah Danon and Onara were a little afraid of her. Both of them were chatting happily. When Bailu turned to look at them, they immediately kept quiet out of fear, or lowered their voices, or stopped talking for the time being. After walking like this for 2 days, the three of them headed east and arrived at a big city called Chang'a City. They walked into the city. Onara and Shah Danon separately asked around. It turned out he was the nearest large city to the East Sea. For 100 miles to the east, it was the coast of East Sea. The three of them walked in Chang'e. The East Sea people's clothes were almost the same as Central Plains. This place was the main hub of East Sea. Most of the travelers and merchants stopped here to trade. But in this period of time, there were many cultivators in the city. Even now, when they were walking on the streets, they saw many people dressed in different sect uniforms, walking here and there, not sure if they were also heading towards Lubo Hill. Shah Danon and Onara discussed and decided to find a small inn and stay for one night. Tomorrow morning, they will depart to Billows Hill. After the two of them finished their discussion, they turned to look at Bai Yao, who was standing at the side. Actually, when the two of them were talking, they purposely raised their voices. Bai Yao was standing beside them, so naturally she could hear them clearly. But Bailu was like she did not know anything. She stood there expressionlessly. Her pair of beautiful eyes looked at the people on the street without any reaction. Helplessly, Shah Danon stepped forward, asked, "Miss Bailu, what do you think about this?" Bailu's body moved, as if she was startled. She took her eyes back from the street. Shah Danon saw her eyebrows were slightly frowned, silent. It did not seem like she was purposely ignoring him, more like she saw something suspicious. He asked curiously, "What is it?" Bailu's eyes looked at far away. Shah Danon followed her eyes. The street was filled with people. There were many people with strange clothes. They must be cultivators, but he did not know what she was looking at. Bailu was silent for a moment, then turned her head, said, "What are you asking me?" Shah Danon carefully told her about his discussion with Onara about staying at the inn for one night. Bailu did not answer, and Onara was still standing far away. He lowered his voice, said, What are you going to do next?" "You cannot go with me to see my master. I can see there are many righteous cultivators in Chang'e. If your identity is exposed, it will be dangerous." Bailu looked at him, suddenly said, "Are you worried about my safety or afraid I will get you into trouble?" Shah Danon, startled, lifted his eyes and looked at Bailu. Her watery eyes were staring at him. His heart skipped a beat. Bailu suddenly smiled, turned and walked away. Onara came from far away, looked at Bailu, said to Shah Danon, "How is it? What did Miss Bailu say?" Before Shah Danon answered, Bailu had already turned her head. A rare smile appeared on her face, said, "Didn't you say you were going to stay at the inn? Why are you still here?" Shah Danon and Onara startled, then looked at each other. There was admiration on Onara's face. He secretly gave Shah Danon a thumbs up, said, "Brother Zhang, you are really capable. Just a few words, and you can make this Missy happy." Shah Danon was unknowingly praised by Onara. He wanted to argue, but did not know where to start. He could only silently follow behind Bailu with Onara. But his mind was already thinking, is the connection between him and this Falcon girl really too deep? According to Shah Danon and Onara, they only need to find a small inn to stay for one night. Unexpectedly as they walked, both of them saw Bai Yao walked into an inn called Haiyun Lu without looking back, and this inn was more than 10 times more luxurious and spacious than the little inn they imagined. Shah Danon and Onara looked at each other. Seeing Bailu walked in, they could only follow. Along the way, Shah Danon whispered, "Brother Sure, do you have enough silver?" "I only have 4 silvers. Just then, Shah Danon suddenly lost his voice. He remembered the only 4 silvers was already cheated by that fortune-teller, Zhou Yixian. Onara did not notice Shah Danon's face. He said bitterly, "I'm a little better than you. but only a few silvers more. Pausing, he whispered, I see the decorations here, at least 30, 40 silvers. At this moment, Bailu already walked to the front of the counter of the innkeeper. The innkeeper raised his head, his face filled with smile, said, Miss, do you want to stay at the inn? Bam! A small gold ingot was tossed in front of the innkeeper. It was worth at least 180 silvers. The innkeeper immediately smiled. His eyes were round. He said, Don't worry, miss. Our inn is 100 years old. Guarantee you will feel at home. Come with peace of mind. Leave with satisfaction. Bailu interrupted him, said, Give me a good room. Make it clean. The innkeeper smiled. Of course, of course. Bailu looked back, said, Then find a room for the two people standing there. The innkeeper looked at Shadanan and Onara, then turned to Bailu, smiled. Then these two also need. Bailu snorted, said, Just give him a woodshed. The innkeeper was speechless. Shadanan and Onara were also speechless. At the end, the innkeeper called the workers to treat Bailu like a princess. As for Shadanan and Onara, the innkeeper did not really arrange them into the woodshed, but only arranged a normal room for them. Shadanan and Onara did not really care about it. After all, they were not spoiled. But they understood Bailu's mistemper a little more. After the three of them entered, the inn regained its tranquility. The people on the street hurried to and fro. They watched as the wind and clouds in the sky changed, and it was gradually dusk. Then an old man and a young man walked in. The old one was holding a cloth gown with the words, Immortal guides the way, written on it. The younger one was a little girl, no more than 10 years old. She held a stick of candied haws in her hand and was eating it with relish. There were Tanis Ka and his granddaughter Tani. Zhou Yixian looked around. Xiao Huan was also looking around. Seeing the luxurious decorations, she gasped, whispered, Grandpa, did you go the wrong way? Tanis Ka was proud, said, You think your grandpa is really useless for so many years. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.